Hello friends. Welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 had the devil Omnitrix and fall in love with Julie Yamamoto. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The Devil's Gift. The meteor streaked across Bellwood's night sky like a crimson tear in the darkness. Its trajectory unnaturally direct. Ben Tennyson watched it from the rooftop of his apartment building, the red glow reflecting in his emerald eyes. At 18, he'd grown taller, leaner, with shoulders broadened by years of heroism and a jawline sharpened by experience. The original Omnitrix had been returned to Azimuth 2 months ago, a graduation, of sorts, the Galvan had called it. Ben had pretended not to care. He lied. That's not a natural meteor, Ben muttered, already moving toward the fire escape. His fingers instinctively brushed his bare wrist, finding only skin where alien technology had rested for years. The emptiness felt wrong, like missing a limb. The impact site beckoned from Riverside Park, 3 miles east. Ben's motorcycle, a gift from Kevin on his 18th birthday, roared to life beneath him, its matte black frame disappearing into the night as he accelerated. The wind tasted like electricity and anticipation. 20 minutes later, Ben stood at the edge of a smoldering crater, scanning for signs of plumber activity or curious civilians. Finding none, he descended into the depression, boots sliding on displaced earth. At the center, a metallic object no larger than a softball pulsed with burgundy light. It wasn't a spaceship or escape pod, just a container of some sort, its surface etched with symbols that resembled Galvan script but twisted somehow, like letters reflected in rippling water. Definitely not standard issue, Ben whispered, crouching to examine it more closely. 5 years of experience screamed caution, but the emptiness at his wrist pulled stronger. When the container suddenly split open with a hiss of crimson vapor, Ben didn't jump back. Inside lay what appeared to be an Omnitrix, but wrong in ways that made Ben's skin crawl. Where the original had been predominantly green and white, this device was deep crimson and obsidian. Instead of the familiar hourglass symbol, its face displayed a pentagonal sign with jagged edges that reminded Ben of ancient warnings carved into forbidden places. No way Azimuth made this, Ben murmured, reaching for it despite his better judgment. The device responded to his proximity, suddenly springing to life and latching onto his wrist before he could react. Pain lanced up his arm, sharp, burning, intimate, as the mechanism tightened and integrated with his skin. The sensation was nothing like the original Omnitrix. This felt invasive, almost predatory. Ben's vision swam with crimson light as knowledge poured directly into his consciousness. Alien forms, yes, but twisted versions of those he knew. Enhanced with something else, something hungry, something ancient. When the pain subsided, Ben found himself on his knees, breath ragged, the strange Omnitrix pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The device's surface was warm against his skin, almost feverish. "What are you?" he asked, knowing he wouldn't receive an answer. The display flickered, cycling hero silhouettes of aliens both familiar and disturbingly altered. The sound of approaching vehicles snapped Ben back to alertness. Headlights swept the park's edge, plumber transport units, finally arriving to investigate. Ben's first instinct was to call out, to have Grandpa Max examine the device, but something stopped him. A whisper of caution, or perhaps possession. This discovery felt personal in ways he couldn't articulate. Ben slipped into the shadows instead, circling away from the crater. The new Omnitrix, not Azimuth's creation, perhaps not even of this dimension, felt heavier than it should. It radiated potential and something else. Something that tasted like power without restraint. He needed time to understand what he'd found. And there was only one person he trusted enough to share this with. Julie Yamamoto's tennis practice had run late. At 18, she developed into one of the most promising players in the country, her name beginning to appear in conversations about future Olympians. The campus courts were empty now, moonlight gleaming off their surfaces as she packed her gear. Chip, her galvanic mechamorph pet partner, had formed himself into her tennis bag, occasionally shifting position when she placed a racket inside him. "Easy," she murmured when Chip gave an electronic chirp. "Just one more. Talking to your equipment now. That's either deady, cation or the first sign of sports psychosis." Julie didn't startle at Ben's voice from the shadows behind her. After 4 years of dating a superhero, on and off, complicated by alien invasions, interdimensional travel, and the ordinary challenges of teenage life, she developed an unflappable calm. "Most of my equipment doesn't talk back," she replied, turning to face him with a smile that faded as she registered his expression. "What's wrong?" Ben stepped into the court lights, his face unusually grave. "Something happened tonight. Something I can't explain to Grandpa Max or Gwen or Kevin." "Not yet." Ship immediately recognized Ben, reforming from the bag into his blob-like self and bouncing excitedly around his feet. Ben absently patted the alien, but his eyes never left Julie's. "Show me," she said simply. Ben extended his wrist, revealing the crimson device. Under the fluorescent lights of the tennis court, its alien nature was even more pronounced. The surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and the symbols across its face shifted subtly, as if alive. Julie's hand reached out, stopping just short of touching it. "That's not the Omnitrix." "No." Ben's voice was tight. "I'm calling it the Devil Omnitrix. Feels right somehow." "Devil." Julie raised an eyebrow. "That's dramatic, even for you. Wait until you see what it does." Ben stepped back, creating space between them. "I've only tried one transformation. It was intense." Ship sensed the tension, moving to Julie's side and partially integrating with her tennis shoe, a protective gesture he'd developed over time. "Ben, maybe we should call Azimuth. Or at least Grandpa Max." "Not yet," Ben interrupted, a flash of something fierce crossing his features before softening. "Please, Julie, I need to understand this first. If it's dangerous, I'll turn it over immediately. But it found me for a reason." Julie studied him, noting the stubborn set of his jaw, the determined gleam in his eyes. That had always led him into trouble, and usually saved the world in the process. "One demonstration," she conceded. "Then we decide together what to do." Ben nodded, relief evident. He turned to the empty court, checking once more for witnesses before activating the device. Unlike the familiar slapping motion he'd used with the original Omnitrix, this required only his thought. The faceplate slid back instantly, revealing an interface that glowed like embers. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, selecting a form and pressing down. The transformation wasn't the familiar flash of green light. Instead, crimson energy erupted from the device, enveloping Ben in a cocoon of swirling red and black particles that hissed and crackled like static. Julie stepped back, alarm evident as Ship merged further with her shoe, ready to form protective armor if needed. Where Ben had stood moments before, a humanoid figure now crouched, wreathed in dissipating crimson mist. It resembled Heatblast, one of Ben's original transformations, but distorted in unsettling ways. Instead of Heatblast's yellow-orange flames, this creature burned with deep crimson and black fire that seemed to consume light. The magma-like cracks in its obsidian skin pulsed with malevolent energy, and when it straightened to its full height, nearly 7 feet, taller than the original alien, Julie saw that its face was more defined, almost skull-like, with flames forming a crown of horns above eyes that burned like twin supernovas. "Ben," she whispered. The creature looked at its hands, flexing fingers tipped with obsidian claws. When it spoke, the voice was a layered thing, Ben's tenor underscored by a deeper resonance that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. "It's still me." The Devil Heatblast turned, examining its form. "But more. I can feel the difference. The power is exponential." To demonstrate, he extended a hand toward an empty water bottle discarded near the court fence. Instead of the usual fireball, a concentrated beam of crimson energy shot forth, not just melting the bottle but seemingly erasing it from existence, leaving behind only a small crater in the concrete. "That was barely a thought," Devil Heatblast said, something like wonder and fear mingling in his inhuman voice. "The original Heatblast couldn't do anything close to that precision. And I can feel other abilities weighty. Like this form knows things the regular version doesn't." Julie approached cautiously, Ship now covering her hand as a protective glove. "Your eyes are different," she observed. "Not just physically. There's something hungry in them." Quote. The alien nodded slowly. "I feel it. A pull. Like the power wants to be used. Demands to be unleashed." He closed his fiery fist. "But I'm still in control." With a thought, the transformation reversed, the crimson energy retracting into the device as Ben returned to human form. He stumbled slightly, catching himself with one hand against the fence. That took more out of me than usual, he admitted, breathing heavily. Like the transformation is more complete, requires more energy. Julie moved to his side, steadying him with a hand on his shoulder. This isn't Azimuth's technology, is it? Definitely not. Ben straightened, examining the device. The interface showed me glimpses of all my usual aliens, but changed. Enhanced with something else, something that feels ancient and not entirely natural. Which means you're definitely turning it over to the plumbers tomorrow, Julie said firmly. Ben didn't immediately agree, his expression troubled. What if this is exactly what we need? The threats keep getting bigger, Julie. The hybrid invasion, Egregor, Diagon, each time we barely scrape through. What if this is the edge we need for whatever comes next? That's exactly the kind of thinking that scares me, Julie replied, her dark eyes serious. Power that comes too easily usually costs more than you expect to pay. Comment hung between them in the night air. After a moment, Ben's shoulders relaxed slightly, the stubborn light in his eyes dimming. You're right, but let me study it for a few days before involving everyone else. If there's any sign of real danger, I'll hand it over immediately. Julie considered this compromise. 3 days, and I'm with you the whole time. Deal. Ben smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. Thanks for not freaking out. Oh, I'm definitely freaking out, Julie corrected him, her own smile tight. I'm just doing it internally while maintaining a calm exterior. It's called dating Ben Tennyson preparedness training. Most girls develop it by the second alien invasion. This drew a genuine laugh from Ben, the sound of it reassuringly normal after the other worldly resonance of Devil Heatblast's voice. Ship, sensing the decreased tension, reformed into a more relaxed blob shape, pulsing contentedly. Let's get out of here, Julie suggested, gathering her actual tennis bag. My parents are at a medical conference in Chicago until Sunday. We can go to my house to figure out our next steps. Ben nodded, following her toward the parking lot where his motorcycle waited. As they walked, the Devil Omnitrix pulsed once against his wrist, a subtle rhythm like a second heartbeat, eager and insistent. Julie's house was a 2-story craftsman in Bellwood's quieter eastern neighborhood. With her parents away, the empty rooms echoed slightly as they entered. Ship immediately bounded ahead, claiming his favorite spot on the living room couch while Julie flipped on lights. Hungry? She asked, heading toward the kitchen. Starving, Ben admitted. The transformation took more energy than I expected. While Julie assembled sandwiches, Ben sat at the kitchen island, studying the Devil Omnitrix more carefully. In the warm light of Julie's kitchen, the device seemed almost to absorb the surrounding brightness, its surface remaining shadowed despite direct illumination. I've been trying to access any kind of help interface, he explained as Julie placed food in front of him. The original had tutorials, information about the aliens. This one, it's like it expects me to already know, or to learn by doing, which makes it more dangerous, Julie pointed out, taking a seat beside him. No safety protocols. Ben shook his head, biting into the sandwich. Not that I can find. But the aliens I glimpsed in the selection interface, they're familiar but enhanced. Heatblast was just the first one I recognized. Ship slithered into the kitchen, curiously examining the device from a distance. When he extended a tendril toward it, the Devil Omnitrix pulsed with crimson light, causing the galvanic mechamorph to retreat with an electronic warble of distress. Ship doesn't like it, Julie observed. Can't blame him. Ben flexed his wrist, watching as the device's surface rippled in response to his movement. It doesn't feel benevolent like Azimuth's technology. This feels like it was made for a different purpose. Which would be? Ben met her eyes. Power without restraint. The original Omnitrix was designed as a tool of understanding, walking in another species' shoes. This feels designed for maximum combat efficiency. The transformations enhanced specifically for warfare. Julie absorbed this with a thoughtful expression, which makes the question of who sent it even more important. Exactly. Ben finished his sandwich and reached for the second one. It's not Vilgax's style, too subtle. And it doesn't have Siphon's tech signature either. Could it be from another dimension? We know they exist. Ben nodded slowly. That's my leading theory. The symbols aren't quite Galvan. They're close, but distorted somehow. Like a parallel evolution of the same language. After finishing his meal, Ben stood and paced the kitchen. I need to test another transformation. Something less destructive than Heat Blast, somewhere with space. Julie checked her watch. It's almost midnight, but I know a place. The old quarry outside town. It's abandoned since they found those protected lizard species there last year. Perfect. Ben stopped pacing, turning to her with determination in his eyes. Will you come with me? I don't want to do this alone. The request revealed a vulnerability that Ben rarely showed, even to her. Julie nodded, already reaching for her car keys. Ship, stay here and guard the house, she instructed. The alien pet gave an affirmative beep, settling into a watchful position on the couch. Drive to the quarry took 20 minutes, the roads empty this late at night. They spoke little, both lost in thought about the implications of what had literally fallen into Ben's hands. The devil Omnitrix occasionally pulsed against Ben's wrist, as if eager for use. The abandoned quarry spread before them like a pale wound in the earth, limestone walls gleaming silver in the moonlight. Julie parked on the access road, and they hiked down a gravelly path to the quarry floor, their footsteps crunching in the stillness. This should give us enough space, Ben said, surveying the open area. Quote, I want to try something with less destructive potential. Maybe XLR8 or Echo. Julie maintained a safe distance, perching on a boulder. Just be careful. That hunger you mentioned. Don't let it drive your actions. Ben nodded, activating the device again. The crimson display cycled through alien silhouettes before he selected one that resembled Echo. When he pressed down, the same crimson energy enveloped him, crackling with greater intensity than before. The transformation completed with a wave of distortion that rippled through the air. Where Ben had stood was now a creature similar to Echo but distinctly altered. Instead of the small, white sound manipulating alien, this version stood nearly human height, its body a gleaming obsidian with veins of crimson energy pulsing beneath the surface. Its face featured no mouth, only a complex pattern of resonance chambers, and its 3 eyes glowed with the same crimson light. Devil Echo, the creature said, its voice not the mechanical, high-pitched sound of the original, but a harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Julie felt it in her chest as much as heard it with her ears. How does it feel? She asked, remaining on her boulder. Amplified. Devil Echo turned slowly, examining its form. Echo could create sound waves and duplicate himself. This version feels like it manipulates vibration at a fundamental level. Reality itself. To demonstrate, Devil Echo extended a hand toward a small rock. Rather than producing a sonic blast, the air around the rock simply distorted. The stone vibrated, then disintegrated into constituent molecules that hung suspended for a moment before collapsing into dust. That wasn't sound, Julie observed, eyes wide. That was something else entirely. Harmonic disruption of molecular bonds, Devil Echo confirmed, the voice resonating from everywhere at once. And I know instinctively how to control the frequency to target specific materials. The alien paused, head tilting. I could bring down this entire quarry with the right harmonic pattern. The casual observation sent a chill through Julie. Let's not test that theory. Devil Echo nodded, then split suddenly into 3 identical copies, a familiar Echo ability, but performed with unsettling grace. The duplicates moved with perfect coordination, surrounding a larger boulder. When they spoke, it was in perfect unison, creating a triangulated harmonic pattern. The duplication is more complete, the 3 devils explained. Original Echo created semi-autonomous copies. These are perfect extensions of consciousness. The duplicates raised their hands simultaneously, and the boulder between them began to vibrate. Instead of shattering, however, it transformed, the molecular structure visibly rearranging under the harmonic influence until the ordinary rock had been transmuted into a crystalline structure that gleamed with internal light. Molecular reconstruction, the devils said, sounding almost awed by their own abilities. This form doesn't just destroy, it can rebuild at the fundamental level. The duplicates remerged into a single entity, which approached the transformed boulder with curious intensity. The power consumption is significant, Devil Echo noted, but the applications are extensive. Ben, Julie said sharply, noting a change in his posture. I think that's enough testing for tonight. Devil Echo turned toward her, head tilting at an inhuman angle. For a moment, something alien and calculating looked out through those crimson eyes, something that wasn't entirely Ben. Then the moment passed, and the alien straightened. You're right. The transformation reversed in a swirl of crimson energy, leaving Ben standing in the quarry, looking slightly disoriented. Wow, that was intense. Julie approached cautiously. You almost lost yourself there for a moment. Ben ran a hand through his hair, looking troubled. I felt it. The more I used the powers, the more right they felt. Like they were always mine to command. He glanced at the crystalline boulder, evidence of abilities far beyond the original Echo. It's intoxicating. Which is exactly why we need to be careful, Julie insisted, taking his hand, the one without the Devil Omnitrix. 3 days, remember. Then we involve the others. Ben squeezed her hand, gratitude in his eyes. 3 days. I just need to understand what this is, what it's capable of. Then we'll figure out the right move. As they climbed back toward Julie's car, neither noticed the shadow that detached itself from the quarry wall, moving with unnatural silence across the stone. Nor did they see the gleam of eyes reflecting moonlight, watching their departure with predatory interest. The Devil Omnitrix had arrived on Earth, and its presence had not gone unnoticed. Morning found Ben and Julie at Mr. Smoothie, the familiar surroundings a stark contrast to the previous night's events. Ben nursed a pineapple chili concoction while Julie stuck with conventional strawberry, both watching as the Devil Omnitrix occasionally pulsed against Ben's wrist. It's been doing that more frequently, Julie noted, keeping her voice low despite the empty tables around them. Ben nodded, absently rubbing the device. It feels eager, like it wants to be used. That's not creepy at all, Julie muttered, stirring her smoothie. Have you tried removing it? Can't, Ben admitted. No manual release mechanism I can find. The original Omnitrix had fail-safes, emergency protocols. This one seems designed to stay attached no matter what. Julie frowned. Another reason to involve Azimuth sooner rather than later. Before Ben could respond, both their phones chimed simultaneously, the special tone Ben had programmed for plumber alerts. They exchanged glances before checking the messages. Break-in at the Bellwood Applied Sciences Laboratory, Ben read, brow furrowing. Energy readings consistent with magic use. Hex, Julie guessed. The sorcerer had become increasingly active in recent months, targeting technological facilities for reasons unknown. Ben stood. Decision made. I need to check this out. We need to check this out, Julie corrected, already gathering her things. I'm not letting you face this alone with that thing on your wrist still untested. They took Ben's motorcycle, arriving at the laboratory complex in minutes. The scene was already cordoned off by disguised plumber agents, maintaining a perimeter keeping civilian police at bay with fake federal credentials. Ben recognized the agent in charge, a stocky Florana in human disguise named Bramble. Tennyson, Bramble acknowledged as they approached. Wasn't expecting you. Thought you were taking personal time. Hard to stay away, Ben replied with a casual shrug. What's the situation? Bramble didn't comment on Julie's presence. The plumbers had long since accepted her as part of Ben's inner circle. Hex breached the facility 30 minutes ago. He's still inside, sealed himself in the quantum research wing. We've evacuated all personnel. What's he after? Julie asked. Unknown. The facility director mentioned they were researching interdimensional energy patterns, trying to create stable portals for scientific exploration. Ben and Julie exchanged significant looks. Interdimensional research, right after the arrival of what appeared to be technology from another reality. The connection seemed unlikely to be coincidence. I'll handle Hex, Ben stated. Moving toward the building, Bramble stepped forward, concern evident. With respect, Tennyson, our intel says Hex has been growing more powerful. And without your Omnitrix. Ben revealed the Devil Omnitrix, causing the plumber agent to step back in surprise. I've got that covered. Temporary upgrade. Before Bramble could ask questions, Ben continued toward the facility, Julie following closely. Once out of earshot, She whispered, temporary upgrade. That's what we're going with. Easier than explaining, Ben replied tensely. I'll give them the full story. After we understand what this thing actually is. The laboratory's main entrance had been shattered, mystic symbols still smoldering around the frame. Inside, emergency lights cast eerie shadows through smoke-filled corridors. They moved cautiously, following the trail of destruction toward the quantum research wing. If Hex is after interdimensional tech, he might know something about your new accessory, Julie suggested. Staying close. Ben nodded. My thoughts exactly. But Hex isn't exactly the sharing type. A crash echoed from ahead, followed by a pulse of magical energy that they fell. T more than saw, a distortion in reality that rippled through the corridor. Ben stopped, considering their approach. I need a form with magic resistance, he muttered, activating the Devil Omnitrix. The crimson display cycled through options before he selected one. This looks like a version of Diamond Head. Should be able to reflect his spells. The transformation enveloped him in now familiar crimson energy. When it dissipated, Julie found herself facing a creature that bore only passing resemblance to Ben's crystalline alter ego. This version stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body formed what appeared to be obsidian crystal shot through with veins of pulsing crimson energy. Its hands ended in razor-sharp claws, and its face was a crystalline mask with 3 glowing eyes arranged in a triangular pattern. Devil Diamond Head, the creature rumbled, its voice resonating through the crystal structure of its body. This feels powerful, Julie noted with concern that this transformation seemed to alter Ben's personality more significantly than the previous ones. His posture became predatory, movements fluid and menacing. Remember why we're here, she reminded him. Information about the Devil Omnitrix. Not a showdown. The crystalline head inclined slightly. I remember. Stay behind me. They proceeded to the quantum research wing, finding the reinforced doors torn from their hinges. Arcane symbols burned into the metal. Inside, the laboratory had been transformed. Equipment lay scattered and broken, and at the center of the destruction stood Hex, his tattooed face. Illuminated by a swirling vortex of energy he was manipulating with his staff. The convergence approaches, the sorcerer was murmuring. The barriers between worlds grow thin. Redecorating, Hex, Devil Diamond Head called, stepping into the room. Not sure the science types will appreciate the mystical touch. Hex turned, surprise momentarily flashing across his face before settling into calculating interest. Tennyson, you've changed. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the symbol on Devil Diamond Head's chest. That's not Azimuth's work. You bear the mark of Nyctalus. Devil Diamond Head paused, the name registering as significant though unfamiliar. Care to elaborate on that? Hex smiled thinly, ceasing his work with the energy vortex, which continued to swirl behind him. How interesting. You wield power you don't understand. His gaze shifted to Julie, who remained partially concealed behind the doorframe. And you brought a witness to your corruption. How thoughtful. Devil Diamond Head stepped forward, crystal arms morphing into blades. Enough riddles. What do you know about this device? I know it doesn't belong in this reality, Hex replied, tapping his staff against the floor. A circle of arcane symbols flared to life around him. I know it was created to break the boundaries between dimensions. And I know its previous bearer brought ruin to entire worlds. Diamond Head's confidence faltered slightly. Previous bearer, the champion of Nyctalus, Hex continued, beginning to pace within his protective circle. A warrior from a reality where magic and technology evolved as one. The Devil Omnitrix, as you've naively named it, is properly called the Infernal Matrix, a device of conquest designed to absorb and corrupt the essence of defeated foes. Julie stepped into the room fully now. Who sent it here? Hex laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. No one sent it, child. It escaped. After consuming its creator and laying waste to its home dimension, it was cast into the void between worlds. It drifts until it finds a suitable host, one with experience wielding similar power. His eyes fixed on Devil Diamond Head. One like you, Tennyson. The implications settled heavily. Not a gift or a weapon intended for Earth's defense, but a parasite seeking a powerful host. You're lying, Devil Diamond Head growled, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I've spent years researching the prophecies of dimensional convergence, Hex replied calmly. The arrival of the infernal matrix was foretold, a harbinger of the barriers between worlds growing thin. He gestured to the swirling vortex behind him. Even now, I work to strengthen those barriers, not break them as you might assume. Julie stepped closer to Devil Diamondhead, concern evident. Ben, I think he might be telling the truth. At least partially. Listen to her, Tennyson, Hex urged. The Matrix is already changing you. Each transformation draws you closer to its true nature. Soon, the line between Ben Tennyson and the power he wields will disappear completely. Devil Diamondhead looked down at his crystalline hands, noting how the crimson energy pulsed more rapidly within them. There was truth in Hex's words. Each transformation felt more natural, more complete, as if the distinctions between himself and the alien forms were blurring. If what you're saying is true, Devil Diamondhead said slowly, then why not just take it from me? He raised his arms, offering an open target. You have the perfect opportunity. Hex's smile turned cold, because it chose you, Tennyson. It will not be separated until it has either consumed you entirely or you have mastered it completely. The latter has never occurred in any dimension where it has appeared. Quote, a tremor ran through the laboratory, the energy vortex behind Hex fluctuating wildly. The sorcerer turned, concern breaking through his composed facade. The convergence accelerates. The Matrix's presence is catalyzing the weakening of dimensional barriers. Another, stronger tremor shook the facility, causing equipment to crash to the floor. Alarms bega, end to wail as structural integrity warnings flashed on still-functioning monitors. This conversation will have to continue another time, Hex announced, raising his staff. If you wish to understand what you now carry, seek the tomb of Legerdemain in the Obsidian Desert. Answers await there. With those cryptic words, he stepped backward into the swirling vortex, which collapsed with a thunderous implosion, sending a shockwave through the room. The laboratory began to break apart around them, ceiling panels crashing down as support structures failed. Devil Diamondhead instantly moved to Julie, crystalline body morphing to create a protective shell around her as debris rained down. We need to get out, Julie shouted over the cacophony of destruction. Hold tight, Devil Diamondhead instructed, gathering her against his crystal chest. With powerful strides, he charged toward the exit, crystal arms extended to shield them from falling debris. The corridor beyond had partially collapsed, but he forged a path through. Crystal body absorbing impacts that would have crushed ordinary flesh. They emerged into sunlight just as the quantum research wing imploded behind them, a final show. CK wave knocking even Devil Diamondhead off his feet. He curled protectively around Julie as they tumbled across the pavement, coming to rest several yards from the facility perimeter. The transformation reversed in a flash of crimson, leaving Ben gasping on the asphalt, arms still wrapped around Julie. Plumber agents raced toward them, Bramble in the lead. What happened in there? The disguised Florana demanded, helping them to their feet. Ben exchanged a look with Julie before answering. Hex was attempting something with interdimensional energy. It destabilized. He escaped through a portal. It wasn't a complete lie, but it omitted crucial details about the Devil Omnitrix and its connection to the event. Bramble seemed skeptical but accepted the explanation as agents moved to secure the collapsing facility. We should get medical attention for both of you, Bramble suggested, noting their disheveled appearance. We're fine, Ben insisted. Just need some rest. I'll file a complete report tomorrow. Before Bramble could object, Ben led Julie away from the scene, both moving with the slight stiffness of those trying to hide injuries. They reached his motorcycle, parked safely outside the plumber perimeter. Tomb of Legerdemain in the Obsidian Desert, Julie recalled once they were alone. That means something to you. Ben nodded grimly. Legerdemain is a pocket diamond. Scion connected to Earth, the source of all magic in our universe. I've been there before. The Obsidian Desert is supposedly a place of ancient knowledge, but also incredible danger. And you're thinking of going there, Julie concluded. Not a question. If Hex was telling the truth, this thing is more dangerous than we realized. Ben looked down at the Devil Omnitrix, which pulsed with seemingly innocent regularity against his wrist. I need to understand what it is before it changes me completely. Julie placed her hand over the device, covering its crimson glow. Then we go together. Tomorrow. After we both get some sleep and process what we learned today. Ben wanted to argue, to insist on immediate action, but exhaustion weighed heavily on him. The transformations had drained more energy than he'd anticipated, and the confrontation with Hex had left him with more questions than answers. Tomorrow, he agreed reluctantly. First light. As they mounted the motorcycle, Neith noticed the small fragment of obsidian crystal embedded in Ben's jacket, a piece of devil diamond head that hadn't reverted with the transformation. It pulsed once with crimson energy before going dormant, waiting. The devil Omnitrix, the infernal matrix, had begun its work. Dreams of fire and transformation haunted Ben's sleep. He stood at the center of countless worlds, each one falling to the power he wielded, power that felt righteous and necessary in the logic of dreams. The devil Omnitrix was no longer on his wrist but had become part of him, its essence integrated with his being till the distinction between Ben Tennyson and the device disappeared entirely. He woke with a gasp at 3 in the morning, sheets tangled around him, sweat cooling on his skin despite the autumn chill. The devil Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, its rhythm matching his racing heartbeat. In the darkness of his apartment, its crimson glow cast blood-red shadows across the walls. Just a dream, he muttered, though the words rang hollow. The connection between himself and the device seemed to strengthen even as he acknowledged it, tendrils of awareness extending from the Omnitrix into his consciousness. Ben slipped from bed, moving to the kitchen for water. As he drank, he studied the device in the dim light. Its surface seemed more integrated with his skin than before, the boundary between technology and flesh less distinct. A soft knock at his door startled him. At this hour, it could only be one person. Julie stood in the hallway, looking as sleep-deprived as he felt. Ship curled around her shoulders like a living scarf, occasionally extending a tendril to pat her cheek comfortingly. Couldn't sleep either, Ben asked, stepping aside to let her enter. Bad dreams, she confirmed, moving past him into the familiar space of his apartment. About you, about that thing, she nodded toward the devil Omnitrix. Same, Ben admitted, closing the door. It's getting stronger, Julie. I can feel it working even when I'm not transformed. Julie sat on his couch, ship sliding down to rest in her lap. Then we move up our timeline. We contact Azimuth today, not after your 3-day window. The suggestion made perfect sense, yet Ben felt an immediate, visceral resistance to it. The thought of surrendering the devil Omnitrix, even to its rightful creator, sent a surge of posse. SSI through him that was both foreign and alarmingly natural. We don't even know if Azimuth can help, he argued, the words coming automatically. This device isn't from our dimension. It might be beyond even his understanding. Julie's eyes narrowed slightly, noting the defensive tone. All the more reason to get multiple perspectives. Azimuth, Grandpa Max, Gwen's magical knowledge, we need all the help we can get. Ben paced the small living room, energy thrumming through him despite his exhaustion. Hex mentioned the tomb of Legerdemain. If we go there first, get concrete information about what this actually is, we'll have something substantial to take to the others. And if it's a trap, Julie challenged, Hex isn't exactly trustworthy. Then I'll handle it, Ben replied with confidence that wasn't entirely his own. These transformations are more powerful than anything I've wielded before. If Hex or anyone else is waiting, they'll regret it. The words hung in the air between them, their implications troubling. Julie studied him, concern evident in her dark eyes. Ship sensed the tension, forming himself into a more alert shape in her lap. That doesn't sound like you, she said quietly. Ben stopped pacing, the observation cutting through the haze of certainty that had enveloped him. He looked down at the devil Omnitrix, watching as it pulsed with what now seemed like smug satisfaction. You're right, he admitted, voice smaller. It doesn't. He sank onto the couch beside her, suddenly looking very young and vulnerable despite all he'd accomplished in his 18 years. I think it's influencing my thoughts, Julie. Subtle pushes toward using its power, keeping it secret. Julie took his hand, the one without the device, and squeezed gently. Then we fight it together. One step at a time. Ben nodded, drawing strength from her steady presence. Let's compromise. We'll go to the Obsidian Desert, but we tell Gwen and Kevin where we're going first. If we're not back in 6 hours, they come after us with everything they've got, including contacting Azimuth, Julie insisted. After a moment's hesitation, during which Ben felt that alien resistance again, he nodded. Including azimuth. The decision made, some of the tension left the room. Julie leaned against him, fatigue catching up now that a plan was in place. Ship formed himself into a small blanket, covering both their laps with his warm, living substance. Try to rest, Julie murmured, eyes already closing. We'll need it tomorrow. Ben put his arm around her, drawing comfort from her presence even as part of him remained vigilant, aware of the devil Omnitrix's constant pulse against his wrist, a second heartbeat that seemed increasingly in tune with his own. As Julie's breathing deepened in sleep, Ben stared out the window at Bellwood's nighttime skyline. Somewhere out there, answers waited in a desert of obsidian and a tomb of ancient magic. Tomorrow they would seek those answers, for better or worse. The devil Omnitrix pulsed once more, stronger than before, as if in approval of the plan. Ben couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that whatever path he chose, the dev Ice had already calculated its response, that it was always several steps ahead, guiding him toward a destination he couldn't yet see. But with Julie beside him, her presence an anchor to his true self, Ben held on to hope that he could master this power rather than be mastered by it. The alternative was unthinkable. Outside, the night deepened toward dawn, stars fading as the first hint of morning approached. A new day, bringing with it new dangers and, perhaps, answers to the mystery that had fallen from the sky and latched onto Ben's wrist, and, increasingly, his soul. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Shadows and Light. Dawn painted Bellwood in amber and gold, the morning light creeping across Ben's apartment floor where he and Julie had fallen asleep on the couch. Ship, ever vigilant, was the first to stir, his amorphous body rippling with alertness as sunlight touched his surface. The living mechanism extended a tendril to gently nudge Julie awake. 5 more minutes, she murmured, Estling closer to Ben before her eyes snapped open, yesterday's events rushing back. Ben, wake up, it's morning. Ben woke with a jolt, instantly alert in a way that felt unnatural. The devil Omnitrix, or infernal matrix, as Hex had called it, seemed to have accelerated his body's recovery despite minimal sleep. What time is it? Almost 6, Julie replied, checking her phone. We need to call Gwen and Kevin before we head to the desert. Reluctance flashed across Ben's face before he nodded, the internal struggle visible for an instant. Right, safety protocol. While Ben showered, Julie prepared a quick breakfast, moving efficiently around his kitchen with the familiarity of someone who'd spent considerable time there. Ship helped in his own way, fetching items from high shelves and monitoring the toaster with childlike fascination. He's fighting it, Julie murmured to Ship as she scrambled eggs. Whatever influence that thing has, Ben's resisting. Ship beeped softly in agreement, forming a small approximation of the devil Omnitrix on his surface before shuddering it away with evident distaste. Ben emerged from the bathroom looking more like himself than he had the previous night, hair damp. Familiar confidence in his stride, though dark circles shadowed his eyes. He wore a black t-shirt instead of his usual green, the devil Omnitrix stark against his skin. You look better, Julie observed, sliding a plate toward him. Feel more centered, Ben confirmed, sitting at the small kitchen counter. I think sleep helped separate my thoughts from its suggestions. They ate quickly, the normality of the moment a welcome respite from the strangeness that had entered their lives. When Ben reached for his phone to call Gwen, however, it buzzed with an incoming message. It's Kai, he said, surprise evident as he read the text. She's in Bellwood, wants to meet. Julie raised an eyebrow. Kai Green, the archaeologist who only likes you as a werewolf. That's convenient timing. Ex-archaeologist, Ben corrected absently. She works with her grandfather now, cataloging alien artifacts. And she got over the werewolf thing. Mostly. He looked up from the phone, expression thoughtful. She's at the museum, examining some new exhibit. Says it's urgent. More urgent than the mysterious alien device trying to possess you? Julie asked, unable to keep a hint of skepticism from her voice. Her history with Kai was complicated. The other woman's on-again, off-again interest in Ben had been a source of tension during their early relationship. Ben hesitated, clearly torn. She specifically mentioned artifacts with interdimensional properties. Could be related to this. He gestured to the devil Omnitrix. Julie considered this, setting aside personal feelings to focus on the logical connection. The museum is on the way to the Obsidian Desert access point. We could make a quick stop, see what she knows. And still call Gwen and Kevin beforehand, Ben added, already dialing his cousin's number. The call was brief and tense. Gwen, ever perceptive, immediately sensed something was wrong from Ben's careful wording. When he explained about finding alternative Omnitrix technology that they were investigating, her suspicion was palpable even through the phone. We'll be back by sundown, Ben promised. If not, come in with everything you've got. And maybe have Grandpa Max contact Azimuth. That bad? Gwen's voice sharpened. Ben, if you're in trouble. Just a precaution, Ben interrupted. I've got Julie with me. We're being careful. After extracting a final promise that they wouldn't take unnecessary risks, Gwen reluctantly agreed to wait until sunset before mobilizing help. Kevin's gruff addition in the background, if you die, Tennyson, I'm going to kill you, brought a smile to Ben's face despite the circumstances. With breakfast finished and their safety net established, they prepared to leave. Julie gathered her Faye belongings while Ben studied a map of the Obsidian Desert on his tablet. According to legend, he explained as they headed for his motorcycle, the desert only appears at certain times, when the boundary between dimensions thins. It's normally just a stretch of ordinary sand about 50 miles northwest of Bellwood. And you think it'll be there today because of the Devil Omnitrix's presence? Julie asked, securing Ship in her backpack where he could remain hidden yet alert. Ben nodded, starting the engine. Hex said the Matrix is causing dimensional barriers to weaken. If that's true, the desert should be accessible. The morning traffic was light as they sped toward Bellwood Museum of Natural History and Xenoarchaeology, a facility that had expanded significantly in recent years as humanity's awareness of extraterrestrial life increased. The modernist building stood in stark contrast to the colonial architecture surrounding it, its curved glass facade reflecting the morning sun like a massive lens. Kai Green waited on the museum steps, her presence commanding attention even in casual clothes. At 20, she'd grown into a striking woman, her Navajo heritage evident in her high cheekbones and copper skin. She'd abandoned the practical ponytail of her youth for an intricate braid woven with turquoise beads, and silver and obsidian jewelry adorned her wrists and neck, protective amulets, Ben recognized. Not merely decorative. Her expression brightened when she spotted Ben, then cooled slightly at the sight of Julie behind him. Tennyson, she greeted, voice rich and measured. Didn't realize you'd bring company. Julie and I are working together on something, Ben replied diplomatically. You said you found artifacts with interdimensional properties. Kai's eyes narrowed, studying Ben with the intensity of someone accustomed to examining ancient objects for hidden meanings. Her gaze dropped to his wrist, lingering on the Devil Omnitrix. That's new, she observed, instantly alert. And definitely not Azimuth's work. You can tell just by looking at it? Julie asked, impressed despite herself. Kai's lips curved in a slight smile. I've spent the last 2 years cataloging every piece of alien technology that's passed through Earth's historical record. I know Galvan design philosophy intimately. She gestured toward the museum entrance. Come inside. What I need to show you isn't for public eyes. They followed her through the main gallery, past exhibits of fossilized alien species and ancient astronaut artifacts recovered from archaeological sites worldwide. Museum staff nodded respectfully to Kai as she passed, evidence of her position here despite her youth. She led them to a secure door marked, research only, scanning her palm to gain access. Beyond lay a climate-controlled laboratory where several objects rested on examination tables, surrounded by scanning equipment and holographic displays. The museum received these artifacts yesterday, Kai explained, directing them to a table where a stone tablet lay alongside what appeared to be fragments of obsidian metal. They were discovered during an excavation in Egypt, buried in a chamber that carbon dating suggests hasn't been opened for over 10,000 years. The tablet was covered in symbols that Ben recognized with a jolt, identical to those etched on the Devil Omnitrix's surface. That's, he began, before Kai cut him off. Interdimensional variant Galvan script, she confirmed. Similar to standard Galvan but with syntactical differences consistent with parallel evolutionary development. She glanced meaningfully at the device on Ben's wrist. Just like whatever that is you're wearing. Julie stepped forward, examining the tablet without touching it. Can you read it? Partially. Kai replied. My grandfather helped with the translation. It describes a conflict between dimensions, one that resulted in the creation of a weapon designed to consume and transform its wielder into the perfect warrior. Her eyes met Ben's, concern evident. A weapon called the Infernal Matrix. Ben's hand instinctively covered the devil Omnitrix, which pulsed warm against his skin as if recognizing itself in the ancient description. How did you know? I didn't, Kai admitted. Not until you walked in with that thing on your wrist. But these artifacts ARED the same day a meteorite crashed outside Bellwood, a crash that Plummer Communications described as anomalous. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. She crossed her arms, silver bracelets clinking softly. The question is, why didn't you contact the plumbers immediately? It's complicated, Ben replied, tension creeping into his voice. It's influencing him, Julie explained, ignoring Ben's sharp look. Subtly pushing him to keep it secret, use its power. Kai's posture shifted instantly from accusatory to protective. That tracks with the tablet's warning. The Matrix was designed as a living weapon, capable of adapting to and enhancing its host's natural abilities while gradually aligning their goals with its own. Which are? Ben prompted. Conquest, Kai said simply. The Bled describes it as the devourer of worlds, breaker of barriers. It was created during a war between dimensions, designed to allow its wielder to access and conquer parallel realities. The laboratory suddenly felt too small, the implications of Kai's words expanding to fill every corner. Ben paced, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of agitation that Julie recognized all too well. Hex said something similar, he admitted, called it a harbinger of dimensional convergence. You spoke to Hex. Kai's alarm was evident. When? Yesterday, Julie supplied. After the device arrived, he was stealing interdimensional research from a laboratory. Kai moved quickly to another table, retrieving a leather-bound journal filled with her neat handwriting. That fits the pattern. Over the past month, there have been 12 thefts worldwide targeting facilities researching interdimensional physics. I've been tracking them, suspecting a connection to these artifacts. She flipped through pages of notes. The tablet mentions a counter-force to the Matrix, something called the Seal of Dimensions. Let me guess, Ben said grimly. Hex is trying to find it before anyone else. Kai nodded. That would be my assessment. The seal supposedly has the power to strengthen dimensional boundaries, or break them completely, depending on how it's used. Which explains why he was at the laboratory, Julie realized. He's looking for a way to locate the seal. Ship chose that moment to emerge from Julie's backpack, having remained silent throughout the conversation. The galvanic mechamorph beeped curiously, extending a tendril toward the tablet before quickly retracting it with an electronic chirp of distress. Ship senses something in these artifacts, Julie translated, stroking the alien soothingly. Something that disturbs him. Kai watched the interaction with fascination. The mechamorph may be reacting to the dimensional frequency embedded in the metal fragments. According to the tablet, the Matrix creates a specific harmonic pattern that weakens reality barriers around it. Ben looked down at the device, which seemed to pulse more rapidly as the conversation progressed. So it's not just changing me, it's changing the fabric of reality around me. The longer you wear it, the more pronounced the effect, Kai confirmed, her voice softening with concern. Ben, this is incredibly dangerous. Not just for you, but for our entire dimension. Which is why we're heading to the Obsidian Desert, Julie explained. Hex mentioned a tomb of legerdemain there that might contain answers. Kai's expression shifted to one of deep concern. The tomb is real, but it's not just a repository of information. According to my grandfather's records, it's a nexus point. Between dimensions, a place where the barriers are naturally thin. She closed her journal decisively. I'm coming with you. That's not necessary, Ben started, but Kai cut him off with a raised hand. It absolutely is. I've spent years studying interdimensional artifacts and magical boundary points. I can read the scripts you'll encounter, and my protective amulets might help shield against whatever influence the thing is exerting on you. The set of her jaw made it clear the matter wasn't up for debate. Besides, my grandfather would never forgive me if I let Ben Tennyson walk into a Mentional Nexus wearing an interdimensional doomsday device without backup. Julie and Ben exchanged glances, having a silent conversation developed over years of partnership. After a moment, Ben nodded. She's right. We need all the help we can get. I'll get my field kit, Kai said, already moving toward a storage locker. And we should take the tablet. It might contain information we need once we're there. While Kai gathered her equipment, Ben moved closer to Julie. You okay with this? He asked quietly. Julie's smile was small but genuine. With having an expert in ancient artifacts and dimensional boundaries join us on a potentially deadly mission. Yeah, I think I can manage. She nudged him gently. Ancient history is ancient history, Ben. We have bigger concerns right now. Ben's relief was palpable, though Julie didn't miss how his eyes tracked Kai's movement across the laboratory, not merely with concern for an old friend, but with something deeper that the devil Omnitrix seemed to amplify. Its crimson pulse quickening when Kai approached again. My Jeep is in the parking garage, Kai informed them, slinging a weathered leather satchel across her body. It's better equipped for desert terrain than your motorcycle. The museum's underground garage was deserted this early, their footsteps echoing between concrete pillars as they approached Kai's vehicle, a rugged, modified Jeep with oversized tires and equipment racks. The back was packed with archaeological tools, survival gear, and what appeared to be weapons disguised as scientific instruments. Grandfather believes in being prepared, Kai explained when she caught Julie examining what looked suspiciously like an energy rifle camouflaged as a ground-penetrating radar device. Especially when dealing with interdimensional phenomena. The drive northwest took them beyond Bellwood's suburbs into increasingly arid terrain. As urban infrastructure gave way to desert scrubland, Ben felt the devil Omnitrix growing warmer against his skin. Its pulses more frequent and insistent. It knows where we're going, he observed, watching red light flicker beneath the device's surface. Kai glanced at him from the driver's seat, concern evident. It's responding to the thinning dimensional boundaries. We're getting close. Julie, seated behind them with Ship nestled in her lap, leaned forward. How will we know when we've reached the Obsidian Desert? You said it's normally just regular sand. According to legend, it reveals itself to those who carry objects from beyond this dimension, Kai replied. Eyes fixed on the horizon where heat distorted the landscape. Given what Ben's wearing, I'd say we have the ultimate access key. The road narrowed to a dirt track before disappearing entirely. I navigated confidently across the open desert, following coordinates on a device that looked more alien than terrestrial. As they crested a small rise, the landscape before them rippled like a mirage, but instead of disappearing, the distortion intensified. There, Kai said softly, bringing the Jeep to a stop. The threshold. Before them, the familiar tan desert suddenly transitioned to a fiel D of black glass that stretched to the horizon, shimmering with internal crimson light. Jagged obsidian formations rose from the ebony surface like the spines of some massive buried creature, their our faces reflecting the morning sun in blood-red glints. The Obsidian Desert, Ben breathed, feeling the devil Omnitrix respond to the sight with a surge of warmth that traveled up his arm and into his chest. Kai retrieved a small device from her satchel, a sphere covered in arcane symbols that began to glow as she activated it. Dimensional stabilizer, she explained. Should help maintain our connection to our reality once we cross over. I thought you were an archaeologist, not a techno-mage, Julie observed as they prepared to exit the vehicle. Kai smiled, the expression transforming her serious demeanor. My grandfather believes knowledge shouldn't be compartmentalized. Science, magic, technology, they're all just different approaches to understanding reality. Sounds like Grandpa Max's philosophy, Ben noted, finding unexpected comfort in the similarity. They stepped from the Jeep onto the threshold between worlds. The transition was physically jarring, like stepping through an invisible membrane that resisted then yielded with a sensation of pins and needles across their skin. Ship chirped in distress, momentarily losing cohesion before reforming around Julie's shoulders as a protective collar. It's okay, she soothed, stroking the alien's surface. We're still here. The obsidian beneath their feet felt unnaturally smooth yet somehow organic, as if they walked on the cooled skin of something vast and alive. Each step produced subtle crimson ripples that spread outward before fading. The air tasted metallic, carrying scents that had no equivalent in their Earled, spices that had never grown on Earth, minerals that existed between states of matter. Kai consulted both her grandfather's journal and the tablet they'd brought from the museum. The tomb should be at the center of the desert, marked by a structure resembling a pyramid but with non-Euclidean geometry. Non-Euclidean? Julie questioned. Angles that shouldn't be possible, Ben clarified, surprising both women with his knowledge. Corners that contain more than 3 dimensions. When they stared at him, he shrugged. Gwen made me read Lovecraft after we faced Diagon. Know thy enemy and all that. They proceeded deeper into the desert, the obsidian formations growing more numerous and complex. Some appeared to shift when viewed from different angles, revealing structures that couldn't exist in 3-dimensional space. Others contained reflections that didn't match their surroundings, showing glimpses of alien landscapes or cities that defied physical laws. The Devil Omnitrix continued its accelerated pulsing, occasionally projecting faint holographic symbols similar to those on the tablet. Ben found himself instinctively understanding fragments of their meaning, concepts related to barriers, transitions, and consumption of power. It's communicating with the desert, he realized aloud. Or something within it. The Matrix originated in a parallel dimension, Kai theorized, watching the symbols with scholarly intensity. This place exists at the intersection of multiple realities. It recognizes this as a crossroads. After an hour of walking, they crested a rise and beheld their destination. In a vast depression ahead stood a structure that challenged perception, a pyramid-like edifice whose sides appeared to fold inward impossibly, creating spaces that recede into dimensions the human mind couldn't process. Its surface was the same volcanic glass as the desert floor, but shot through with veins of crimson energy that pulsed in perfect synchronization with the Devil Omnitrix. The tomb of Legerdemain, Kai whispered, awe and trepidation mingling in her voice. The nexus point between our dimension and the realm of magic. As they approached the structure, the air grew increasingly dense with energy, making their skin tingle and hair stand on end. Ship flowed more completely around Julie's shoulders, forming a protective layer that occasionally sparked with defensive protocols. The entrance to the tomb was a triangular aperture that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. No markings adorned its surface, but as Ben approached, the Devil Omnitrix projected a complex sigil onto the obsidian face. With a sound like crystal cracking, the entrance dilated open, revealing a descending corridor lit by the same crimson veins that ran through the structure's exterior. It recognized you, Julie noted, unable to keep concern from her voice. Or it. Ben nodded grimly. Home recognizes home. This place and the Matrix come from the same source. They entered cautiously, Kai activating several protective amulets that glowed with soft turquoise light, a stark contrast to the crimson illumination surrounding them. The corridor descended at an angle that seemed to shift subtly as they walked, creating momentary sensations of walking on walls or ceiling before perspective righted itself. Dimensional bleed, Kai explained when Julie commented on the disorientation. This place exists partially in multiple realities simultaneously. Our brains try to reconcile incompatible spatial relationships. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, whose ceiling vanished into darkness above. At its center stood an altar of pure obsidian, upon which rested a single object, a disk of metal similar to the fragments from the museum, etched with the same interdimensional Galvan script. The seal, Ben recognized instantly, the Devil Omnitrix flaring with intensity at the sight. Before they could approach, movement rippled through the shadows surrounding the altar. Hex emerged, his tattooed face illuminated by the crimson light, staff held ready. Right on schedule, Tennyson, the sorcerer observed, his voice echoing unnaturally in the chamber. The Matrix guided you here. Just as I anticipated. You knew we'd come, Ben realized, anger flaring. You wanted us to lead you to the seal. Hex smiled thinly. I knew where the tomb was located. But only the Matrix could open it. Finding you at the laboratory was fortuitous. I merely needed to plant the suggestion and let the device do the rest. Julie stepped forward. If you know what the Matrix is, you know how dangerous it is. Why would you want Ben to activate it fully? Because the alternative is worse, Hex replied, his typical arrogance giving way to something that sounded almost like concern. The dimensional barriers are failing regardless. The Matrix is merely accelerating an inevitable process. He gestured to the disk on the altar. The seal of dimensions can repair those barriers, or it can be used to control which dimensions connect to ours. Kai's eyes narrowed with understanding. You don't want to stop the convergence. You want to direct it. Precisely, Ms. Green. Your grandfather would be proud of your insight. Hex moved toward the altar. Imagine selectively connecting our world to dimensions of pure magical energy while severing links to those that would consume us. I offer salvation through controlled convergence. Ben felt the devil Omnitrix pulse with something almost like approval at Hex's words. The device seemed to resonate with He concept of controlled dimensional barriers, though whether in agreement or hunger, he couldn't tell. And where does the Matrix fit into this plan? Ben demanded, fighting the device's whispered suggestions that Hex's proposal had merit. It is both key and catalyst, the sorcerer explained. Created to break barriers between worlds, it can also be used to strengthen them, if wielded by someone with sufficient willpower. His eyes fixed on Ben. Someone like Ben Tennyson, whose experience with the original Omnitrix makes him uniquely capable of resisting complete corruption. The logic was seductive, appealing to Ben's hero complex while justifying his continued use of the dangerous device. Julie recognized the manipulation immediately, stepping closer to Ben as if her proximity could shield him from Hex's words. If that's true, she challenged, why not simply explain this from the beginning? Why the cryptic warnings and dramatic disappearance? Hex smiled coldly. Would you have believed me? Or would you have immediately sought Azimuth's assistance in removing the device, depriving our dimension of its best hope for survival? While they spoke, Kai had been slowly circling the chamber, examining the symbols etched into the walls. He's lying, she announced suddenly. Not about the dimensional convergence, that's real. But about the seal's purpose. She pointed to a sequence of glyphs. This doesn't describe controlled connections between dimensions. It's a warning about the consequences of using the seal and matrix together. Hex's expression hardened. You read the ancient scripts well. But you lack context. The warnings come from those who feared change, who couldn't comprehend the possibilities of controlled convergence. The tension in the chamber escalated. Ted as Hex and Kai engaged in a battle of archaeological interpretation, each translating the same symbols differently. Ben found himself caught between their competing narratives, the devil Omnitrix, alternatively warming and cooling against his skin as if evaluating each argument. Julie moved to Ben's side, speaking quietly. Trust your instincts, not the Matrix's reactions. Who's been honest with you from the beginning? The simple question cut through the confusion. Ben nodded. Decision made. Kai, he called, interrupting the heated debate. What exactly does the warning say will happen if the seal and matrix are united? Irreversible dimensional collapse, she replied instantly. Not controlled convergence. Total destruction of the barriers between all realities. Every dimension eating into every other until none remain distinct. Hex's patience visibly thinned. Enough discussion. The seal must be activated before the barriers weaken further. Either assist me willingly, Tennyson, or I'll take what I need by force. The threat catalyzed Ben's resistance to the Matrix's influence. Not happening, he stated firmly, activating the device. The crimson display cycled through alien silhouettes before he selected one. You want to control dimensions. Start by controlling yourself. The transformation enveloped him in swirling crimson energy. When it dissipated, Devil Diamondhead stood in Ben's place. Obsidian crystal body veined with pulsing red light. But unlike in the laboratory, Ben maintained clearer control of his consciousness within the transformation, Julie's presence and Kai's warnings acting as anchors to his true self. Hex responded instantly, staff glowing with magical energy as he levitated off the ground. I had hoped for cooperation, but preparation will suffice. He thrust his staff forward, sending a blast of arcane energy toward Devil Diamondhead. The crystalline alien raised both arms, forming a reflective shield that redirected the magical attack into the ceiling. Shards of obsidian rained down as Devil Diamondhead charged, crystal arms morphing into blades. Get to the seal, he shouted to Kai and Julie. Figure out its true purpose. Julie nodded, ship flowing to cover her completely in protective armor as she and Kai darted toward the altar. Hex noticed their movement, dividing his attention to send a second blast their way, but Devil Diamondhead intercepted it. Crystal body absorbing the magical energy with a crimson flare. Your fights with me, he growled, voice resonating through his crystalline form. The sorcerer sneered. You still don't understand what you've become, Tennyson. The Matrix doesn't just transform your body, it transforms reality around you. He gestured sharply with his free hand, and the obsidy and floor beneath Devil Diamondhead suddenly liquefied, attempting to engulf him. The devil transformation responded instinctively, crystal body reconfiguring to absorb and crystallize the molten obsidian, incorporating it into his mass. Devil Diamondhead grew larger, more jagged, crimson energy flowing more intensely through his expanded form. Thanks for the power boost, he rumbled, voice deeper and more alien. Crystal shards launched from his arms like missiles, forcing Hex to create a magical barrier that shattered on impact, throwing the sorcerer against the chamber wall. Meanwhile, Kai and Julie reached the altar, examining the seal with urgent intensity. Ship partially retracted his armor from Julie's hands, allowing her to touch the artifact while maintaining protection elsewhere. It's warm, she reported, feeling energy pulse through the metal disc. And there's something inside it, like machinery, but alive. Kai consulted the tablet they'd brought, comparing symbols. It's not just a seal, it's a key. According to this, it was created alongside the Matrix as its counterbalance. Her fingers traced intricate patterns on the disk's surface. One to break, one to repair. But united improperly, they cause catastrophic failure. Across the chamber, the battle between Devil Diamondhead and Hex escalated. The sorcerer had recovered, now chanting in an ancient language that caused reality around them to warp. Sections of the chamber appeared to fold in on themselves, creating spatial traps that Devil Diamondhead had to navigate while maintaining his assault. The Devil transformation proved more adaptable than its standard counterpart, crystal body flowing through the distorted spaces with unnatural grace. Each obstacle Hex created was met with an innovative counter. Devil Diamondhead seeming to instinctively understand the altered physics of the environment. You fight well with your new power, Hex acknowledged, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. But how long before it fights through you? He changed tactics, staff glowing with hypnotic energy. The Matrix seeks the seal. Feel its pull, Tennyson. Embrace its purpose. The magical suggestion struck Devil Diamondhead like a physical blow, the crimson energy in his crystal body suddenly pulsing with painful intensity. For a moment, his form wavered, the alien consciousness within the transformation surging forward with a hunger that eclipsed Ben's own thoughts. Ben. Julie's voice cut through the magical interference. It's trying to separate you from the transformation. Stay centered. The warning provided the anchor Ben needed. Within the crystal form, he reasserted control, forcing the devil transformation to obey his will rather than the Matrix's deeper programming. Devil Diamondhead straightened, eyes narrowing. Nice try, he rumbled, then launched forward with renewed purpose. Crystal arms extended into whip-like appendages that coiled around Hex's staff, yanking it from his grasp. Without his primary focus for magic, Hex's control over the chamber's reality distortions faltered. The sorcerer fell to one knee, maintaining a defensive barrier around himself but unable to launch further attacks. It doesn't matter, Hex hissed, hatred and something like fear mingling in his eyes. The convergence has already begun. Feel it. As if responding to his words, the entire structure shuddered. The crimson veins throughout the obsidian walls pulsed more rapidly, and faint cracks appeared in the air itself, literal tears in the fabric of reality through which glimpses of other dimensions became visible. He's right, Kai called urgently. The dimensional barriers are failing. According to these symbols, we have minutes at most before this nexus point collapses completely. Devil Diamondhead stalked toward Hex, crystal hand closing around the sorcerer's throat. How do we stop it? Hex laughed bitterly despite his precarious position. You can't. The process was set in motion the moment the Matrix arrived in our dimension. The best you can hope for is controlled collapse, which requires both artifacts. Or we could repair the barriers completely, Kai interjected, holding the seal aloft. Its surface now glowed with the same turquoise light as her protective amulets, responding to her touch in a way distinctly different from its reaction to the Devil Omnitrix. The seal was created by those who opposed the Matrix's creators. It can heal dimensional wounds if used correctly. Another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. Chunks of obsidian broke free from the ceiling, crashing to the floor around them. The reality fractures widened, allowing disembodied voices and impossible colors to spill into the tomb. We need to decide now, Julie urged. Ship's armor protecting her from falling debris. Devil Diamondhead looked between Hex and Kai, weighing their conflicting claims against the Devil Omnitrix's own pulsing influence. The device wanted the seal, that much was clear, but whether for repair or destruction remained ambiguous. Give me the seal, he finally said to Kai. I'll use the Matrix to amplify its power. Kai hesitated, clearly torn between trust in her old friend and fear of the transformation before her. Ben, the warning specifically says joining them incorrectly leads to collapse. Then we'll do it correctly, Devil Diamondhead replied. Crystal features softening slightly. You read the tablet. Guide me through it. Another violent tremor decided the matter. Kai nodded grimly, approaching with the seal held carefully in both hands. According to the text, the Matrix must be temporarily deactivated during the connection, or its hunger will corrupt the process. Devil Diamondhead nodded, the crimson symbol on his chest glowing as he willed the transformation to reverse. The crimson energy retracted, leaving Ben standing in his human form, the Devil Omnitrix pulsing rapidly on his wrist. Now what? He asked, fighting against the device's clear resistance to the plan. Kai positioned the seal directly above the Omnitrix, referring to the tablet one final time. The seal needs to ECT with the Matrix's core programming without triggering its defensive protocols. She looked to Julie. We need a technological interface. Something that can moderate the connection. Julie understood immediately. Ship. The galvanic mechamorph detached from her, flowing down her arm to position himself between Ben's wrist and the seal. Ship's natural ability to interface with technology made him the perfect bridge between the ancient devices. This will be unpleasant, Kai warned Ben, taking position on his left while Julie stood at his right. The Matrix will fight the process. Story of my life. Ben replied with a grim smile, then nodded to Ship. Go ahead, buddy. Ship extended his substance, simultaneously connecting with both the Devil Omnitrix and the seal. The moment contact was established, energy surged through the connection. Ben gasped, pain lancing up his arm as the Matrix responded with violent resistance, its crimson light flaring like a miniature sun. Hold steady, Kai urged, using her free hand to activate the seal's internal mechanisms. Turquoise light fought against crimson, the two energies spiraling around each other in the space between the devices. The chamber shook continuously now, reality fractures spreading across the walls like cracks in glass. Through them came glimpses of other dimensions, some beautiful, others nightmarish, all pressing against the thinning barriers between worlds. It's working, Julie observed, watching as the fractures nearest to them began to seal themselves, the edges knitting together as the seal's energy entered the Matrix's dimensional disruption. Ben could barely hear her through the roaring in his ears. The Devil Omnitrix burned against his skin, its influence flooding his mind with images of power, conquest, transformation. Only his years of experience with the original Omnitrix gave him the mental discipline to resist, focusing instead on channeling the device's energy through Ship into the seal. Hex, momentarily forgotten in the crisis, saw his opportunity. Despite his weakened state, the sorcerer lunged forward, staff extended to strike at the connection between the devices. If I cannot control the convergence, then let the dimensions fall. Julie reacted instantly, moving to intercept. Without Ship's armor, she was vulnerable, but her years as an athlete and her experiences alongside Ben had honed her reflexes. She caught Hex's staff with both hands, momentum carrying them both to the ground in a desperate grapple. Finish it, she shouted to Ben and Kai, struggling to keep Hex occupied. The sorcerer was physically stronger, but Julie's determination gave her an edge. She twisted the staff, using its length as leverage to push Hex back from the ritual. Ship, sensing her danger, extended part of himself to reinforce her grip on the magical artifact. With Hex temporarily contained, Ben and Kai redoubled their efforts. The seal now glowed so brightly it was difficult to look at directly. Its turquoise light spreading outward to touch the reality fractures throughout the chamber. Where the light made contact, the tears sealed themselves, dimensional integrity restoring. One final surge, Kai instructed, her voice strained with effort. The Matrix needs to acknowledge the seal as its counterpart, not its enemy. Ben understood what she wasn't saying. He needed to convince the device. Which meant working with it rather than against it. Closing his eyes, He mentally addressed the Matrix directly. We both want survival. He projected into the connection. Dimensional collapse destroys you too. Accept the seal. Balance the equation. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, suddenly, the devil Omnitrix's resistance ceased. The crimson light dimmed, pulsing. G in rhythm with the seal's turquoise glow. Ship chirped in surprise as the energy flow smoothed, becoming harmonious rather than conflicted. Throughout the chamber, the reality fractures closed completely. Dimensional integrity restoring with audible snaps of energy. The obsidian structure stabilized, the violent tremors subsiding to gentle vibrations before stopping entirely. It worked, Kai breathed. Wonder replacing tension in her voice. The barriers are healing. Across the room, Hex howled in frustration, summoning a final surge of magical energy that threw Julie aside. The sorcerer staggered to his feet. Staff raised for a desperate attack. You fools. You've condemned us to isolation when we could have had dominion. Before he could strike, the chamber responded to the restored dimensional balance. The obsidian floor beneath Hex suddenly liquefied, engulfing him to the waist. The sorcerer struggled, but the living stone pulled him deeper until only his head and shoulders remained visible. This isn't over, Tennyson, he snarled as the stone hardened around him. The Matrix has only begun its work. With those ominous words, the obsidian completed its encasement of the sorcerer. Transforming Hex into a statue of black glass, his expression frozen in eternal rage. The crisis averted, ship detached from the connection, flowing back to Julie who sat up slowly, wincing from her confrontation with Hex. The seal, its work completed, cooled in Kai's hands, the turquoise light fading to a gentle glow. Ben examined the devil Omnitrix, which had changed subtly during the process. The crimson light now contained faint traces of turquoise, pulsing with a steadier rhythm that felt less invasive, more balanced. What happened to it? He asked, showing Kai the change. She studied the device with scholarly interest. The seal recalibrated it, partially, at least. Its fundamental nature remains the same, but its dimensional disruption capabilities have been temporarily neutralized. She frowned thoughtfully. It's like putting a dangerous animal on a leash, still dangerous but controllable. For how long? Julie asked the practical question, accepting ship's help to stand. Unknown, Kai admitted, but the tablet mentioned cycles of stability followed by deterioration. We may have bought weeks or months before the Matrix begins actively weakening dimensional barriers again. The implications settled heavily between them. The devil Omnitrix remained attached to Ben's wrist, still a source of enormous power and potential corruption, but its most immediately catastrophic effect had been temporarily contained. So we solved one problem but still have another, Ben summarized, helping Julie steady herself. Typical Tuesday for us, really. Despite the gravity of their situation, the quip brought small smiles to both women's faces, a moment of normalcy amid the extraordinary that characterized life with Ben Tennyson. We should leave before the desert reverts, Kai suggested, carefully placing the seal in her satchel. The dimensional stabilization will cause this intersection point to shift back to normal space soon. They made their way out of the tomb, leaving Hex's obsidian prison behind. The structure seemed smaller somehow as they emerged, the impossible geometry simplifying as reality reasserted its usual laws. The obsidian desert beyond had already begun to change, patches of normal sand appearing amidst the black glass landscape. The journey back to Kai's jeep was silent, each processing the implications of what had occurred. The devil Omnitrix remained a weight on Ben's wrist and consciousness, but its influence felt more manageable now, a voice rather than a compulsion, a suggestion rather than a command. As they shed the threshold between the obsidian desert and the normal world, Kai paused, turning to Ben. You need to understand something. What we did today was a temporary solution. The Matrix is designed to adapt and overcome. It will find ways around the seal's influence eventually. Then we keep looking for a permanent solution, Ben replied with characteristic determination. Azimuth, Grandpa Max, Professor Paradox, someone will know how to remove it safely. And until then, Kai pressed, concern evident. The transformations still enhance your power considerably, but they also continue to influence your personality. Each use brings you closer to integration with the device's true nature. Ben glanced at Julie, drawing strength from her steady presence. Then I use it only when absolutely necessary. And never alone. He extended his hand to Kai. Thank you for your help today. We wouldn't have succeeded without your knowledge. Kai took his hand, but instead of a handshake, she pulled him into a brief, fierce embrace. Be careful, Ben, she murmured against his ear. The Matrix chose you for a reason. It recognized something in you that aligned with its purpose. When she pulled back, their eyes met with an intensity that spoke of unresolved history and potential futures. Julie watched the interaction with complex emotions, concern for Ben predominant, but also a newfound respect for Kai's expertise and courage. They crossed the threshold together, the obsidian desert shimmering out of existence behind them as they stepped back into their own reality. Kai's jeep waited where they'd left it, the normality of the vehicle almost jarring after their interdimensional experience. The drive back to Bellwood was quieter than their outward journey, each lost in thought. The devil Omnitrix pulsed occasionally against Ben's wrist, but with less urgency, as if satiated by the day's events or perhaps recalibrating after its encounter with the seal. Late afternoon sun paint. Bellwood in gold and amber as they reached the city limits, the same colors that had greeted them that morning, though it felt as if days or weeks had passed since then. Kai drove them to the museum first, where she secured the seal in a specialized containment unit within the research laboratory. I'll contact my grandfather, she informed them as they prepared to leave. He has connections with other magical practitioners who might have additional information about the Matrix's origins. And we'll talk to Azimuth, Ben replied. If anyone can figure out how to remove this thing safely, it's him. Kai hesitated, then said, I'm staying in Bellwood for the foreseeable future. The museum has asked me to head their new interdimensional artifacts division. Her eyes met Ben's, then Julie's. I think we all know this story isn't finished. The Matrix, Hex, the dimensional weakening, they're connected in ways we don't fully understand yet. We could use your expertise, Julie acknowledged, extending an olive branch that surprised even herself. Ship and I aren't exactly experts in ancient interdimensional artifacts. A smile warmed Kai's features. I appreciate that. She held up her phone. I have both your numbers. Let's stay in close contact. Any change in the Matrix's behavior should be documented immediately, with plans made for further research and a promise to meet again soon. They parted ways, Kai remaining at the museum while Ben and Julie headed to his apartment on his motorcycle. Evening settled over Bellwood as they arrived, the sky deepening to purple and indigo. Ben's apartment welcomed them with familiar comfort after the strangeness of the day. Ship immediately flowed to the couch, forming himself into a cushion with an electronic sigh of contentment. How do you feel? Julie asked once they were settled, watching Ben carefully. He considered the question honestly. Different. The Matrix doesn't feel as invasive after the connection with the seal. It's still there, still powerful, but the compulsions are muted. He rotated his wrist, examining the device. It's almost like it's processing what happened, reevaluating its approach. That's not entirely comforting, Julie noted wryly, but her eyes showed relief at his increased self-awareness. We should call Gwen and Kevin, let them know we survived. The call was brief but intense. Gwen immediately sensing the gravity of their situation despite Ben's attempts to downplay it. After extracting a promise that they would meet tomorrow for a full debriefing, and that Ben would Gwen to examine the devil Omnitrix with her magical abilities, the conversation ended with Kevin's typical gruff concern masked as irritation. Exhaustion finally caught up with them as night fell completely. Julie, unwilling to leave Ben alone with the Matrix despite its apparently subdued state, claimed his couch while he took the bedroom. Ship alternated between them, his protective instincts on high alert despite his own fatigue. In the quiet darkness of his room, Ben lay awake, studying the devil Omnitrix's gentle pulsing. The device seemed almost contemplative, its crimson light occasionally showing flashes of turquoise from the seal's influence. What are you really? He whispered to it, receiving no response beyond the steady rhythm against his skin. Sleep eventually claimed him, bringing dreams less violent than the previous night but no less significant. He stood at crossroads between dimensions, the devil Omnitrix connecting him to countless realities simultaneously. In some, he saw versions of himself who had succumbed to the device's influence, becoming conquerors or destroyers. In others, he witnessed versions who had mastered it, harnessing its power while maintaining their humanity. And through it all, two constants remained: Julie's steadfast presence as his emotional anchor, and Kai's knowledge guiding him through the dimensional maze. Both women essential, both connected to his fate in ways that transcended ordinary relationships. The devil Omnitrix pulsed against his dream self's wrist, no longer demanding but questioning, as if the encounter with the seal had awakened something like curiosity within its alien consciousness. When morning came, Ben woke feeling more rested than he'd expected. The device on his wrist continued its steady rhythm, neither accelerating nor dimming as he rose to face a new day of challenges. In the living room, he found Julie already awake, ship curled in her lap as she researched interdimensional theories on her laptop. "Anything useful?" he asked, joining her on the couch. "Maybe." She showed him a webpage from a theoretical physics journal. "This scientist, Drive, Elena Validis, has been publishing papers on dimensional barrier technology for the past year. She's specifically studying non-invasive methods of strengthening reality coherence." Ben's eyebrows rose at the familiar name. "Elena, I haven't heard from her in years. Not since the nanite incident." "Apparently she's channeled her expertise into legitimate research," Julie noted, scrolling through the scientist's impressive publication record. "And she's currently working at a facility less than 100 miles from Bellwood." The devil Omnitrix pulsed once, more strongly, at the mention of Elena's proximity. Whether recognition, interest, or warning, Ben couldn't tell, but the reaction confirmed their next step. "I think we just found our next lead," he said, feeling the first stirrings of hope since the crimson device had attached itself to his wrist. With Julie beside him, Kai's knowledge supporting them, and potentially Elena's scientific expertise ahead, the path forward seemed less impossible than it had the day before. Outside, morning light painted Bellwood in hues of promise, shadows retreating before the new day's potential. Whatever the devil Omnitrix's ultimate purpose might be, Ben faced it not alone but surrounded by those whose strength and wisdom complemented his own, a reminder that true power came not from alien technology but from human connection. The device pulsed against his wrist, acknowledging the thought in its own inscrutable way. As Ben Tennyson prepared to face whatever came next. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, The Hunter's Mark. Stars wheeled silently across the void, their ancient light casting faint illumination upon the Predator's vessel. Obsidian and crimson, the craft shared the same aesthetic as the device it pursued, all jagged angles and hungry purpose. Within its command chamber, Kyber studied holographic displays showing Earth's continents in stark relief. The infamous hunter stood motionless, only his eyes moving as targeting systems narrowed their focus to a single city. "Bellwood. Proximity alert confirmed," announced the ship's navigation system, its voice a mechanical approximation of reverence. "Infernal matrix energy signature detected. Stability metrics fluctuating." Kyber ran a finger along the jagged scar bisecting his face, the gesture thoughtful rather than nervous. Few beings in the galaxy had witnessed an infernal matrix and lived to document its effects. Fewer still would willingly approach one. But Kyber was no ordinary hunter. "Curious," he murmured, voice like gravel over steel. "The signature shows harmonic disturbance. Something has interfered with its awakening cycle." His pale eyes narrowed. "Identify current bearer." The ship's systems processed the command, cross-referencing the matrix's energy pattern with planetary databases. A holographic image materialized: Ben Tennyson, the notorious wielder of the original Omnitrix. "Expected, yet disappointing," Kyber sighed. "The Nyctalian lords promised a challenge worthy of my skills. Instead, I find the matrix attached to a child who stumbles into victory through luck rather than skill." The hunter activated a wall panel, revealing an arsenal of specialized weapons. H bore the same obsidian and crimson aesthetic as his ship, crafted specifically for this hunt. He selected a curved blade that hummed with suppression energy and a sidearm designed to disrupt transformation matrices. "Begin atmospheric entry," he commanded. "Stealth protocols maximum. The prey must remain unaware until I choose to reveal myself." As the ship descended toward Earth's atmosphere, Kyber activated a final system, a containment chamber at the vessel's core, designed to house the infernal matrix once it was separated from its host. The chamber pulsed with crimson light, responding to the distant presence of its counterpart. Soon, Kyber promised both himself and his unseen employers The greatest hunt of my career begins. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of Ben's apartment, painting stripes across the kitchen table where he, Julie, and Gwen sat reviewing everything they'd learned about the devil Omnitrix. Kevin leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Attention divided between the conversation and the device on Ben's wrist, which continued its steady pulsing. So let me get this straight, Kevin summarized. You found an evil Omnitrix that's slowly trying to possess you. Used it to fight Hex, teamed up with your ex to find some magical seal thing, and now you're planning to visit another ex who might know how to get rid of it. He shook his head. Your love life is more dangerous than most people's supervillains, Tennyson. Elena isn't an ex, Ben corrected automatically. We never dated. She just tried to kidnap you and replace Julie with nanites, Kevin countered. Totally normal friendship behavior. Julie intervened before the conversation could derail further. Elena's past issues aside, her research could help us understand how to contain the Matrix's dimensional effects. The seal bought us time, but according to Kai's translations, that's all it did. Gwen, who had been silent during the exchange, finally spoke. Quote, the magical signature is unlike anything I've encountered. Her eyes glowed briefly as she examined the devil Omnitrix with her anodite senses. It's not evil, exactly, more like hungry. Endlessly hungry for energy and experience. That tracks with how it feels during transformations, Ben admitted. Each form wants to absorb, consume, enhance. It's like the original Omnitrix but with all the safeguards removed and the power amplified. And it's changing you, Gwen stated, not a question. I can see tendrils of its energy extending into your life force. The connection deepens with each transformation. The blunt assessment silenced the room. Ship, who had been playing with a small mechanical toy in the corner, sensed the tension and slithered to Julie's side, integrating partially with her sneaker in his preferred gesture of protection. Which is why we need Elena's research, Ben finally responded, determined rather than defensive. If anyone understands how to separate invasive technology from a human host, it's her. You're assuming she's fully recovered from her own technological infection, Gwen pointed out gently. The last time we saw her, the nanites had significantly altered her psychology. Her research publications suggest stability, Julie countered, displaying Elena's impressive academic record on her tablet. 20 papers in 3 years, consistent methodology, peer recognition. Whatever issues she had seem under control now. Kevin straightened, pushing away from the counter. Only one way to find out. Road trip to wherever she's holed up. The Phillips Research Institute, Ben supplied. About 90 miles north, in the mountains. They specialize in experimental technology with medical applications. Convenient location for a secret lab, Kevin noted dryly. Remote. Defensible. Probably minimal oversight. We're not accusing her of anything, Ben said firmly. We're asking for her help. Right. Because that's worked out so well with your exes so far. For the last time, Elena is not. Boys, Gwen interrupted, her tone ending the argument instantly. We're leaving in 20 minutes. Kevin's car, since we can't all fit on Ben's motorcycle. As they prepared to depart, Ben stepped onto the apartment's small balcony, seeking a moment alone. The devil Omnitrix pulsed against his skin, its rhythm changing subtly as if sensing his thoughts. I know what you're doing, he murmured to the device. Connecting me to people who can either help control you or help activate your full potential. Kai, Elena, you're building a network around yourself. The device offered no response beyond its steady pulsing, but Ben didn't need confirmation. The Matrix worked on multiple levels: physical, psychological, social. If direct corruption failed, it would use his connections to achieve its goals. Julie joined him on the balcony, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. Talking to your new accessory. Trying to stay one step ahead of it. Ben replied, grateful for her presence. It's adaptive, Julie. Every countermeasure we develop, it incorporates and evolves. Then we keep changing our approach, she said simply. Together. The word carried weight beyond its syllables, a promise and a reminder that despite the women suddenly entering or re-entering his life, Julie remained his constant. Ready to see Elena again? He asked, acknowledging the potential awkwardness. Julie's smile was small but genuine. As ready as you are to see another ex who isn't an ex, apparently. Her teasing lightened the moment. drawing a laugh from Ben as they rejoined the others. Whatever complications the day might bring, at least they faced them with humor intact. The Phillips Research Institute rose fro. The mountainside like a modernist dream, all gleaming glass and brushed steel, its laboratories terraced into the natural rock in a fusion of human innovation and environmental respect. Kevin's car wound up the access road. Security checkpoints growing more sophisticated with each level. Impressive security for a medical research facility, Gwen observed as they passed through the third checkpoint. Her plumber badge granting them access that would normally require weeks of background checks. The Institute partners with both military and civilian clients, Julie explained, consulting her tablet. Their breakthroughs in programmable matter and neural interfaces have applications beyond medicine. At the final checkpoint, they were met by an Institute representative, a tall woman with CLO's cropped silver hair and intelligent eyes that assessed each of them with clinical precision. Director Chambers, she introduced herself, voice clipped and efficient. Dr. Validus informed me of your arrival. I must remind you that many of our projects remain classified. You'll be restricted to her laboratory and common areas only. Ben stepped forward, extending his hand. We appreciate the accommodation, Director. This is a personal matter concerning Drive Validus's unique expertise. The director's eyes flicked to Ben's wrist, noting the devil Omnitrix with a microsecond of recognition before her professional mask returned. Indeed. Follow me, please. As they proceeded through pristine corridors, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that the director knew more about their situation than she revealed. Her gaze had lingered too long on the device, her recognition too immediate for someone who should have no knowledge of interdimensional technology. The laboratory they entered occupied an entire level, its circular design offering panoramic views of the mountain range beyond. Equipment hummed with purpose, screens displayed complex equations, and at the center of it all stood Elena Validus. Time had transformed her from the troubled young woman they'd last encountered. Now 23, Elena carried herself with the confidence of recognized brilliance. Her once wild dark hair was styled in a precise bob, silver streaks at the temples the only visible reminder of her nanite integration. When she turned at their entrance, her eyes widened momentarily before a smile transformed her serious expression. Ben Tennyson, she said warmly, crossing the space between them. It's been years. Before Ben could respond, Elena embraced him briefly, a gesture somewhere between professional and intimate that made Julie straighten slightly beside him. When Elena stepped back, her gaze moved to Ben's wrist, professionalism reasserting itself. The infernal matrix, she stated, confirming Ben's suspicion that information about the device had somehow preceded their arrival. May I? Ben extended his arm, allowing Elena to examine the devil Omnitrix without touching it. She retrieved a handheld scanner from a nearby workstation, passing it over the device with practiced precision. Fascinating harmonic patterns, she murmured. The dimensional frequency modulation is unlike anything in our databases. She looked up, meeting Ben's eyes directly. How long since attachment? 3 days, he replied. But we've already encountered complications. Dimensional bleeding, transformation enhancement, psychological influence. Elena nodded as if this confirmed her expectations. And amelioration attempts. A temporary stabilization using something called the Seal of Dimensions, Julie supplied. It reduced the matrix's dimensional disruption effects but didn't alter its fundamental connection to Ben. At Julie's voice, Elena seemed to notice the rest of the group for the first time. Her smile remained, but cooled several degrees. Julie, it's good to see you again. And Gwen and Kevin as well. She returned her attention to her scanner, professionalism a convenient shield. The seal's effect is already degrading. I'm detecting increasing instability in the matrix's dimensional anchoring. Director Chambers, who had remained silently observing, stepped forward. Dr. Validus, perhaps you should brief them on Project Boundary. It may be relevant to their situation. Elena hesitated, glancing between the director and Ben. Something unspoken passed between the women before Elena nodded. You're right. Follow me, please. She led them deeper into the laboratory, past workstations where researchers studiously avoided looking at the visitors, to a sealed chamber at the far end. After a retinal scan and voice confirmation, the door slid open to reveal a smaller lab containing a single, remarkable device. A ring of obsidian metal, 12 feet in diameter, stood vertically on a raised platform. Crimson energy occasionally sparked along its surface, contained by field generators positioned at cardinal points around it. The similarity to the Devil Omnitrix's aesthetic was unmistakable. Project Boundary, Elena introduced with carefully modulated pride. A controllable dimensional aperture capable of strengthening the barriers between realities, or weakening them, Kevin observed shrewdly, noting the dual configuration of the control systems. Elena acknowledged this with a slight incline of her head. Theoretically, yes, though our mandate is strictly defensive. Where did you get the technology? Gwen asked, her anodite senses detecting the same hunger emanating from the ring that the Devil Omnitrix projected. That's classified, Director Chambers interjected smoothly. Suffice to say, we've been aware of dimensional thinning for some time. Project Boundary represents our most promising countermeasure. Ben approached the ring, feeling the Devil Omnitrix respond to its proximity with accelerated pulsing. It's from the same source as this, he stated, not a question. Whoever created the Matrix also built these rings. Elena's eyes met his, something like approval in their depths. Yes, we've been studying fragments of interdimensional technology for 18 months. The recent escalation in dimensional instability made our research a priority. Recent escalation meaning since I got this thing, Ben concluded. Which means you've been monitoring its effects. We monitor all extradimensional phenomena, the director stated, neither confirming nor denying. Dr. Validus's expertise with integrated technology makes her uniquely qualified to lead this project. Julie, who had been examining the ring's control systems with ship's assistance, looked up. These containment protocols are designed for something much larger than just stabilizing dimensions. Her eyes narrowed. You're trying to trap something. The observation created a momentary silence, broken by a slow clapping from the laboratory entrance. All heads turned to see a figure that shouldn't have been able to penetrate the Institute's security, tall, muscular, with pale skin and predatory eyes. Impressive deduction, Kyber commended, stalking into the room with casual menace. Though incomplete, his cold gaze fixed on Ben. They're not trying to trap something. They're trying to trap someone. Security alarms blared to life, but with a gesture from the hunter, the systems shorted out in cascades of sparks. Director Chambers reached for a concealed weapon, only to find Kyber suddenly beside her, his movement impossibly fast. With clinical precision, he rendered her unconscious with a nerve strike. I apologize for the intrusion, he continued conversationally. But my employers grow impatient. The Matrix has been active for 3 days without proper integration. This experiment must end. Ben stepped forward, positioning himself between Kyber and the others. Who sent you? The Nyctalian Lord's hex mentioned. Surprise flickered across the hunter's scarred features. Your knowledge is unexpected. Perhaps the Matrix has communicated more than my employers anticipated. He inclined his head slightly. Yes, the Lords of Nyctalis require their property returned. Your resistance is noted but ultimately irrelevant. The Devil Omnitrix pulsed urgently against Ben's wrist, crimson light spilling between his fingers. Without conscious decision, Ben found the device active, its display cycling through alien silhouettes. Your employers can try taking it themselves, he challenged, selecting a transformation. I'm getting tired of everyone wanting this thing except me. Crimson energy engulfed him as the Devil Omnitrix responded. The transformation more fluid than previous attempts, as if the device were adapting to his physiology with each use. Where Ben had stood moments before now crouched a creature. Similar to Wildmud but significantly altered. The orange fur of the original alien was replaced by deep crimson, streaked with black patterns that shifted like living shadows. Instead of the single row of gills that served as Wildmud's sensory organs, this variant possessed 3 rows arranged in complex patterns. Its musculature was more pronounced, claws longer and wickedly curved, and when it straightened to its full height, it stood nearly 9 feet tall. Devil Mutt, Kevin named it, instinctively backing away despite being an ally. Definitely not the friendly neighborhood version. The transformation let out a roar that vibrated at subsonic frequencies, causing laboratory equipment to shatter and the humans present to cover their ears in pain. Only Kyber remained unmoved, his expression almost appreciative. The predator form, he noted with professional respect. Excellent choice, though it won't save you. The hunter reached for his belt, retrieving what appeared to be a small whistle carved from the same obsidian material as the devil Omnitrix. Before he could use it, a stream of nanites shot from Alina's outstretched hand, engulfing the device and crushing it. No Nematrix control this time, Elena stated coldly, her arm transformed up to the elbow into a nanite construct. This isn't the same Ben Tennyson you hunted before. Kyber's eyes narrowed at the intervention. Dr. Validus, my employers have questions about your project as well. How convenient to resolve both matters simultaneously. Devil Mutt didn't wait for further conversation. With frightening speed, it bounded across the laboratory, covering the distance to Kyber in a heartbeat. The hunter sidestepped with practiced grace, drawing his curved blade in a motion too fast for human eyes to track. The weapon hummed as it passed through the space Devil Mutt had occupied milliseconds before. Ben, careful, Gwen called, her hands glowing with mana as she erected barriers to protect He unconscious director and the laboratory equipment. That blade is designed for matrix suppression. The warning came just as Kyber executed a second strike that would have connected with Devil Mutt's shoulder. The transformed Ben twisted unnaturally, body contorting in ways the original Wild Mutt couldn't achieve, avoiding the blade by millimeters. The movement positioned him behind Kyber, SSIVE claws slashing toward the hunter's back. Kyber dropped and rolled, the attack missing by the narrowest margin, leaving deep gouges in the laboratory floor where his body had been. He came up with his sidearm drawn, firing 3 shots in rapid succession. Devil Mutt should have been hit, would have been, had this been the original transformation. Instead, the creature's enhanced senses predicted the attack's trajectory, allowing it to weave between the energy pulses with impossible agility. While the duel between predators escalated, Julie and Ship moved to Alina's side, both women watching the confrontation with calculated intensity. Your nanite integration looks complete, Julie observed, noting how Alina's arm flowed seamlessly between human and mechanical states. Self-controlled now, Elena nodded without taking her eyes off the battle. 3 years of reprogramming, neurofeedback, and medical supervision. I'm still part machine, but the machine is part of me now, not the other way around. Convenient timing that Ben shows up with interdimensional tech problems right when you're working on a dimensional containment system, Julie noted, voice neutral but implications clear. A small, tight smile curved Alina's lips. The universe has a sense of humor. Her gaze shifted momentarily to Julie. Or perhaps the Matrix does. It chooses its connections carefully. Before Julie could respond to the loaded statement, Kevin interrupted from across the room. Little help here. This guy's not playing around. Kyber had adapted to Devil Mutt's superior speed and senses, using the laboratory's layout to limit the transformation's movement options. The hunter moved with methodical precision, herding his quarry toward the dimensional ring where, Julie suddenly realized, he would have a tactical advantage. He's forcing Ben toward Project Boundary, she called to Gwen. The ring must be part of his extraction plan. Understanding immediately, Gwen redirected her magical energy, creating a barrier between Devil Mutt and the dimensional device. Ben, stay away from the ring. It's a trap, Devil Mutt acknowledged with a growl, changing tactics to circle away from the ring. The transformation's sensory abilities had been steadily mapping the laboratory, identifying optimal attack vectors. With a sudden burst of speed, it feinted left before launching itself at the ceiling, using the structural beams as springboards to approach Kyber from above. The hunter anticipated the maneuver, pivoting to track his quarry's aerial approach. What he didn't anticipate was Kevin, who had absorbed the metal from a nearby equipment rack and now tackled him from behind. The momentary distraction was all Devil Mutt needed to land directly on Kyber, massive claws pinning the hunter's arms. Yield, Kevin suggested, forming his hand into a mace pressed against Kyber's temple. Even you can't beat these odds. For a moment, it seemed the hunter might indeed surrender. Then, with a movement so swift it appeared almost teleportation, Kyber broke Kevin's hold, simultaneously dislocating both shoulders to slip Devil Mutt's grasp. The pain would have incapacitated most beings. But Kyber merely grunted, rolling away and resetting his joints with practiced efficiency. Impressive teamwork, he acknowledged, now wielding his suppression blade in a defensive posture. But ultimately futile. The Matrix must return to Nyctalus. Elena stepped forward, her nanite arm reconfiguring into something resembling a cannon. That's not happening. This facility is under government protection. Whatever your employers want, they won't get it by sending a single hunter, no matter how skilled. Kyber's expression remained impassive, but something like amusement flickered in his pale eyes. Government protection. Is that what Director Chambers told you? He gestured to the unconscious woman. Ask her about Project Genesis when she wakes. Ask why this facility has the same dimensional signature as the Matrix. The statement created momentary confusion that Kyber exploited. With blinding speed, he threw something toward the dimensional ring, a small obsidian sphere that attached to the structure and immediately pulsed with crimson energy. The ring activated, crimson light swirling within its circumference. A temporary setback only, Kyber announced, backing toward the dimensional portal. The hunt continues, Ben Tennyson. The Lords of Nyctalus are patient but not infinitely so. When next we meet, I won't come alone. Devil Mutt lunged toward the hunter. But Kyber had timed his retreat perfectly. He stepped into the swirling crimson light and vanished, the portal collapsing behind him with an implosion that shook the laboratory. The obsidian sphere that had activated the ring crumbled to dust, leaving Project Boundary inert once more. The immediate danger past, Ben reverted from his transformation in a swirl of crimson energy. He staggered slightly, the Devil Mutt form having taken more out of him than previous transformations. That was intense, he managed, accepting Julie's steadying hand on his arm. Devil Mutt's senses were overwhelming. I could perceive everything: heartbeats, electromagnetic fields, dimensional frequencies. And it showed in your fighting style, Gwen observed, approaching with concern evident. You moved differently, Ben. More predatory, more ruthless. The observation hung in the air, uncomfortable in its accuracy. Ben had felt the difference himself. The transformation had brought with it not just enhanced physical abilities but a hunter's mentality that merged with his own consciousness. The line between Ben Tennyson and Devil Mutt had blurred more significantly than with any previous alien form. Elena moved to check on Director Chambers, her nanite arm reverting to human appearance. She's coming around. Whatever Kyber did was precisely calculated, enough to incapacitate without causing permanent damage. The director regained consciousness with professional efficiency, immediately assessing the situation before focusing on the damaged dimensional ring. Containment breach, she stated flatly. Protocols dictate facility lockdown. Before you do that, Ben interrupted, maybe you can explain what Kyber meant about Project Genesis and why this facility shares a dimensional signature with the Matrix. Director Chambers' expression revealed nothing, but she took slightly too long to respond. The hunter was attempting to sow discord. A common tactic. No, Elena contradicted, surprising everyone present. He was telling the truth. I've noticed the harmonic resonance myself but assumed it was due to our research materials. Her eyes narrowed. What is Project Genesis, Director? For a moment, it seemed Chambers might maintain her secrecy. Then, with a resigned sigh, she struggled to her feet. Project Genesis is classified above your clearance, drive. Validus. But given current circumstances, she gestured toward a secure terminal. Perhaps a limited disclosure is warranted. The terminal activated under her biometric authorization, displaying schematics that made Elena's eyes widen. This is why you recruited me, she realized. Not to contain dimensional intrusions, but to prepare for them. What are we looking at? Julie asked, positioning herself to see the display. Ship extended from her shoulder, his technological nature allowing him to interface directly with the data stream. Project Genesis is a contingency plan, the director explained, her clinical tone at odds with the implications of the schematics. For several decades, we've been aware that dimensional barriers are gradually thinning. The process was natural and slow until 18 months ago, when it began accelerating exponentially. Around the time you started finding interdimensional technology fragments, Gwen deduced. Chambers nodded. Precisely. The fragments weren't causing the degradation, they were symptoms of it. Pieces of other realities bleeding into ours as the barriers weakened. And the devil Omnitrix? Ben prompted, rubbing his wrist where the device continued its steady pulsing. How does it fit into your contingency plan? We didn't anticipate the Matrix specifically, Chambers admitted. But our models predicted the eventual emergence of a dimensional catalyst. an object or entity that would either complete the barrier degradation or provide means to reverse it. She gestured to Project Boundary. This facility was established to detect, contain, and potentially harness such a catalyst. Alina's expression hardened as understanding dawned. You built a trap, not just for dimensional intrusions, but specifically for the Matrix's bearer. She turned to face her employer directly. You knew it would come to Earth, and you positioned me to help capture it because of my history with Ben. The accusation hung in the air, neither confirmed nor denied by Chambers' carefully neutral expression. The implications rippled through the room. Alina's recruitment, her research focus, even the facility's location all suddenly contextualized as part of a longer game. That's why you didn't seem surprised when we arrived, Julie realized. You've been monitoring Ben since the Matrix attached itself. Monitoring all potential catalysts, Chambers corrected smoothly. Ben Tennyson has long been on our watch list given his history with reality-altering technology. Ben's patience visibly thinned. So while we've been trying to figure out what this thing is and how to control it, you've been sitting on information that could help because, what? National security, interdimensional politics, survival, Chambers replied simply. The dimensional degradation isn't just a scientific curiosity, Mr. Tennyson. It represents an existential threat to our reality. The Matrix accelerates that threat, but it may also be the key to addressing it, if properly controlled. By properly controlled, you mean removed from Ben and placed in your containment systems, Gwen translated, magical energy still shimmering around her hands. What happens to the host during separation? The director's slight hesitation provided all the answer they needed. Alina's nanite arm reactivated instinctively, responding to her spike in emotional intensity. Unacceptable, Elena stated flatly. Whatever your models predict, forcible separation would kill him. The Matrix integrates at the cellular level. I can see the connection patterns from here. Sometimes sacrifices, Chambers began, but Kevin cut her off. Yeah, we've heard that speech before from better villains than you, he growled, still in his metallic form. Not happening. Tension escalated as security personnel began assembling outside the laboratory, visible through the glass walls. Chambers noticed their arrival with a small nod of satisfaction. I'm afraid I must insist on Mr. Tennyson remaining for observation, she stated, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. The safety of our reality outweighs individual concerns. Ben looked around at the developing standoff, security forces outside, his friends preparing for confrontation within, and Elena caught between loyalty to her employer and her evident concern for him. The devil Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, almost smugly, as if it had anticipated this precise scenario. There's another option, he said finally, catching everyone's attention. Cooperation instead of confinement. Explain, Chambers prompted, though her posture remained alert for potential conflict. You need to study the Matrix. I need to understand how to control it. Elena has expertise in integrated technology. Work with us, not against us. Ben met the director's calculating gaze directly. You've seen what the devil transformations can do. Do you really want to make an enemy of that power? The implied threat wasn't subtle, but it was effective. Chambers reassessed the situation with evident recalculation of risk factors. What are you proposing specifically? A partnership. Elena continues her RCH with full access to your data on dimensional degradation. We share what we know about the Matrix and the Seal of Dimensions. Together, we develop a solution that doesn't involve dissecting me to get at this thing. Ben, Julie cautioned quietly, we can't trust them. We don't have to trust them, he responded without breaking eye contact with Chambers. Just work with them until we have better options. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds before the director made her decision, signaling the security forces to stand down. Conditional acceptance, pending approval from my superiors. Dr. Validus will be your primary liaison. Any change in the Matrix's status must be reported immediately. And your data archives are open to us, Gwen added firmly. All research on dimensional degradation, interdimensional technology, and specifically anything related to Nyctalus. Acceptable, Chambers conceded, though her expression suggested the arrangement displeased her. Dr. Validus, please escort our partners to the guest quarters. They'll need to be debriefed thoroughly. As the director departed to manage the aftermath of Kyber's intrusion, Elena turned to Ben. With complex emotions playing across her features. You trusted my expertise over their containment protocols. Thank you. You stood against Kyber without hesitation, Ben replied with a small smile. Some things don't change. Julie cleared her throat pointedly. We should secure this area before discussing next steps. That hunter could return with reinforcements. Unlikely in the immediate term, Elena assessed, leading them from the damaged laboratory toward a secure conference room. Interdimensional travel requires significant energy. Kyber will need time to recharge whatever technology he used to activate Project Boundary. As they walked, Kevin fell in beside Ben, voice lowered. You realize we just allied with people who were planning to dissect you, right? Just checking if that's part of some master plan or just typical Tennyson improvisation. Keep your enemies closer, Ben replied with a shrug that didn't quite hide his concern. Besides, Elena won't let them do anything too extreme. You're putting a lot of faith in someone who once tried to turn Julie into nanites so she could have you to herself. People change, Ben said, watching Elena lead the group with confident strides. Her nanite arm now completely indistinguishable from human tissue. She's not the same person she was. Neither are you, Kevin observed, nodding toward the devil Omnitrix. Quote, that thing changes a little more of you with each transformation. I saw how you fought as Devil Mutt. That wasn't just alien instincts, that was something else. The observation struck uncomfortably close to Ben's own concerns. The line between himself and the devil transformations blurred further each time, the alien consciousness merging more completely with his own. What would remain of Ben Tennyson after 10 transformations? After 20, the conference room Elena led them to offered spectacular mountain views through blast-resistant windows. Security systems hummed discreetly in the walls, scanning and recording everything while projecting an interference field against outside surveillance. Ship immediately flowed from Julie to investigate these systems, his technological curiosity irrepressible. This room is secure even by Institute standards, Elena explained, activating holographic displays that surrounded the central table. We can speak freely here. Good, Gwen said, taking charge with natural authority. Because it's time for complete honesty. Starting with how much you already knew about the Matrix before we arrived. Elena met the challenge directly. I knew it existed. I knew it originated in a parallel dimension called Nyctalus. I knew it had appeared on Earth approximately 3 days ago. She gestured to the devil Omnitrix on Ben's wrist. I did not know. It had attached to Ben until you arrived today. But you suspected, Julie pressed, standing slightly closer to Ben than casual conversation required. I hope not, Elena corrected, the admission carrying unexpected vulnerability. The Matrix's integration protocols are invasive and potentially fatal. When our sensors detected its activation, I prayed it hadn't found a human host. Her eyes met Ben's with genuine concern. Especially not someone I care about. The statement created a momentary silence, charged with unspoken history. Julie's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly, while Gwen and Kevin exchanged knowing glances. Ben, either oblivious to the subtext or choosing to ignore it, refocused the conversation. What do you know about the Lords of Nyctalus that Kyber mentioned? Grateful for the redirect, Elena activated a specific data file. A holographic representation of a humanoid figure appeared, tall, obsidian-skinned, with features that seemed to shift slightly when viewed directly. Crimson energy patterns flowed beneath the surface of its skin in configurations reminiscent of circuit pathways. The dominant species of Dimension N7, colloquially known as Nyctalus, Elena explained. Advanced beyond our comprehension in both technology and dimensional science. According to fragmented records, they developed the Matrix as a weapon during a multidimensional conflict. Against whom? Gwen asked, studying the hologram with scholarly interest. Unknown. The records only refer to the light dimensions as their adversaries. Elena expanded the display to S. How multiple similar figures gathered around what appeared to be an early version of the Matrix. What we do know is that the conflict ended catastrophically for both sides. Dimensional barriers were severely damaged, and the Matrix was lost, cast into the void between realities. Until it found its way to Earth, Kevin concluded. Lucky us. Not luck, Elena corrected grimly. Attraction. H sits at a dimensional nexus point, a location where multiple realities naturally intersect. The matrix gravitates toward such points, seeking a suitable host to fulfill its purpose. Which is? Ben prompted. Alina's expression darkened. Conquest. The matrix was designed to create the perfect interdimensional warrior, a being capable of traveling between realities and subjugating them. It enhances its host's natural abilities while gradually transforming them into something else. The clinical description sent a chill through the room. Ben unconsciously covered the devil Omnitrix with his other hand, as if trying to contain its influence. That's consistent with what Hex told us, Julie noted. And with the tablet Kai translated. The sorcerer knows more than he revealed, Elena agreed. His kind have interacted with dimensional boundaries for millennia. The Institute has attempted to recruit him for consultation, without success. Kevin snorted. Yeah, Hex isn't big on the whole government employment thing. Tends to interfere with his megalomania. So the Matrix is basically turning me into a multidimensional conqueror, Ben summarized, bringing them back to the central concern. The question is, how do we stop it? Elena hesitated, exchanging a glance with Gwen that didn't go unnoticed by the others. There are two approaches, she finally said. Containment or integration. Define integration, Julie requested, her tone making it clear she already disliked the concept. The matrix cannot be removed without killing its host once cellular bonding has progressed beyond a certain point. Elena explained carefully. You've passed that threshold, Ben. The alternative to removal is controlled integration, accepting the bond but directing its development. Becoming what it wants me to become. But on my terms, Ben translated. Essentially, yes. Julie shook her head emphatically. That's not an option. We've seen how each transformation affects him. He matrix is designed to corrupt its host, not partner with them. I agree with Julie, Gwen added. We need to focus on containment and eventual separation, even if the technology doesn't exist yet. Elena nodded, acknowledging their concerns. The Institute has been developing containment protocols based on our understanding of the Matrix's dimensional frequency. Project Boundary was the first step, creating a system that could potentially house the Matrix in a stable pocket dimension if it could be safely removed. Which brings us back to the removal problem, Ben pointed out. Not getting far with either approach. There might be a third option, Elena said after a moment's hesitation. It's theoretical, based on my work with nanite integration. She activated another data file, displaying molecular structures that shifted between states. Partial integration with selective blocking. Meaning, Kevin prompted, looking lost among the scientific imagery. Allowing the matrix to bond with Ben's physical form while selectively filtering its psychological influence, Elena clarified. Similar to how I maintain control over the nanites in my system. They're part of me, but they don't control my thoughts or actions. The suggestion created a thoughtful silence. Of all the options presented, this represented the most practical compromise, neither full rejection nor complete surrender to the Matrix's influence. That would require intimate understanding of how the Matrix communicates with its host, Gwen observed, always quick to identify the scientific challenges. Do we have that level of detail? Not yet, Elena admitted. But with Ben's cooperation and the Institute's resources, we could develop it. All eyes turned to Ben, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the exchange. The devil Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, its rhythm seemingly accelerated by the conversation about its future. I need time to consider the options, he finally said. Expression thoughtful rather than defeated. But Elena's approach makes the most sense given what we know. I'd rather learn to live with this thing than die trying to remove it. Julie's hand found his, squeezing gently. We'll figure it out together. All of us. The inclusive statement was delivered while looking directly at Elena, both acknowledgement and boundary setting in a single glance. Elena inclined her head slightly. Accepting the parameters, the Institute can provide accommodations while we begin preliminary research. I'd like to run a complete diagnostic on the Matrix's current integration level. No isolation chambers, Ben stipulated firmly. No separation from my team. We work together or not at all. Agreed, Elena responded without hesitation. My laboratory has guest quarters attached specifically for long-term research participants. You'll have full access to communication systems and can leave at any time. The arrangement settled, they moved to Alina's Privet E laboratory section, a space notably separate from the main institute facilities, with its own security systems and research equipment. The guest quarters proved surprisingly comfortable, with separate E-rooms for each of them arranged around a common area equipped with both leisure amenities and workstations. While Gwen and Kevin explored the facilities, Ben submitted to Alina's initial diagnostic scans. Julie remained close, Ship occasionally extending from her backpack to examine particularly interesting pieces of equipment. The integration is progressing faster than I expected, Elena noted, studying real-time data on multiple screens. The Matrix has established connections throughout your nervous system and has begun modifying cellular structures in your major organs. That sounds ominous, Ben responded, watching his own biology displayed in concerning detail. It's actually fascinating from a scientific perspective, Elena countered, genuine wonder in her voice. The modifications appear designed to enhance your natural systems rather than replace them. Your lung capacity has increased by 17%, neural transmission speed by 22%. Even your baseline human form is being optimized. Enhanced for what purpose, though? Julie questioned, studying the data with evident concern. Creating a more effective vessel for the Matrix's agenda. Elena nodded, almost certainly, but these changes aren't inherently harmful. In fact, they're improving your physical condition significantly. She hesitated before adding, the psychological integration is more concerning. A new display activated, showing brain activity patterns with areas highlighted in crimson. These regions show increased activity consistent with the Matrix's energy signature. They correspond to centers for aggression, territoriality, and dominance behaviors. The predator aspects I felt during the Devil Mutt transformation, Ben recognized. It's not just during the transformations, is it? The influence continues afterward, at a reduced level, yes, Elena confirmed. Each transformation strengthens these pathways. Over time, they could become dominant personality features. Julie moved closer to Ben, her presence both supportive and protective. Is this the integration you were proposing to manage? Because it looks like progressive possession to me. Elena's expression remained professionally neutral despite the challenge. It's precisely what I propose to manage. With the right interface technology, we could create filters that allow the physical N cements while blocking the psychological modifications. How long would developing such technology take? Ben asked, pragmatic as always. With the Institute's resources and my experience with nanite neural interfaces. Perhaps 2 weeks for a prototype, longer for a permanent solution. Elena deactivated the most alarming displays, focusing instead on baseline readings. In the meantime, I recommend minimal use of the Matrix's transformation capabilities. Each activation accelerates the integration process. Ben nodded, though the recommendation created its own complications. The Devil Omnitrix had proven essential in confronting threats like Hex and Kyber. Limiting its use meant vulnerability at a time when enemies were actively hunting them. As if reading his thoughts, Elena added, I can provide defensive support if needed. My nanite abilities have developed significantly since you last saw them in action. We noticed, Julie commented, her tone not entirely approving. The arm transformation was impressive. That's just the surface application, Elena replied, a hint of pride breaking through her professional demeanor. I can fully transform when necessary, or deploy nanite constructs independently. The demonstration that followed was indeed impressive. Elena's right arm transformed smoothly into a variety of configurations, weapon systems, scientific instruments, mechanical tools, while maintaining perfect control and human-like articulation. More remarkably, she then separated a portion of nanites completely from her body, forming them into a small drone that circled the laboratory before reintegrating with her system. Complete neural control, she explained. The nanites recognize my consciousness as their core programming. They're extensions of my will, not independent entities. Similar to how Ship functions with Julie, Ben observed, noting how the galvanic mechamorph perked up at the mention of his name. Similar principle, different implementation, Elena agreed. Ship is a sentient symbiote who chooses to cooperate. My nanites are technology I've reprogrammed to serve as prosthetic enhancements. The distinction seemed important to her, a way of separating her current Controlled condition from her previous, obsessive state. Julie recognized the significance, offering a small olive branch. Your control is remarkable. It must take an incredible discipline to achieve this level of integration. 3 years of work, Elena acknowledged, accepting the gesture with a grateful nod. Many setbacks. Many nights wondering if I'd ever be more than the nanites, puppet. Her gaze shifted to Ben. Your encouragement made a difference. Believing someone saw me as more than my condition, it mattered. The moment of vulnerability, created a shift in the room's atmosphere. For the first time since their arrival, Elena wasn't the confident scientist or the Institute's representative, just a young woman who had fought her own technological integration and won. Well, Ben said after a moment, characteristically breaking tension with casual humor, at least one of us figured out how to manage their alien tech problem. Maybe there's hope for me yet. The comment drew smiles from both women, easing the complex dynamics between them. As Elena continued her diagnostic procedures, conversation shifted to practical matters, security protocols, research parameters. Communication with Kai regarding the Seal of Dimensions. By evening, a tentative plan had emerged. Elena would begin developing the selective integration technology while Gwen researched magical countermeasures to the Matrix's influence. Ben would submit to regular monitoring while minimizing transformations, and Kevin would coordinate with Plummer Resources to establish a security perimeter against further incursions by Kyber or other threats. As the group dispersed to their assigned quarters for the night, Elena requested a final private word with Ben. Julie hesitated visibly before nodding and continuing to her room, though Ship remained with Ben, a small but significant detail that didn't escape Elena's notice. Your friends are protective, shish. E observed once they were relative alone in the laboratory. Especially Julie. With good reason, Ben replied, leaning against a workstation. This situation has everyone on edge. Elena approached. Professional distance momentarily set aside. I need to tell you something about the Matrix that I couldn't discuss with the others present. She glanced at Ship, who had formed himself into a small blob on Ben's shoulder. Something the Institute discovered but hasn't fully documented. Ben straightened, instantly alert. What is it? The Matrix doesn't just choose its hosts randomly, Elena explained. Voice lowered despite the room's security. It seeks specific genetic markers, indicators of adaptability to transformation and dimensional attunement. Makes sense. That's why it found me instead of someone else. Not just you, Ben. Elena's eyes held his with uncomfortable intensity. The markers it seeks appear most prominently in certain bloodlines. Your family carries them strongly, but so do others. Understanding dawned slowly. Others including the Validus line, she confirmed. My father's research into nanite technology wasn't coincidental. He was studying integration mechanisms that could prepare humanity for dimensional transitions. The Institute recruited me because my genetic profile shows the same markers as yours, just expressed differently. The revelation landed heavily, contextualizing Elena's involvement in ways Ben hadn't considered. So you could have been the Matrix's host if circumstances were different. I still could be, she clarified. The statement hanging between them like a physical presence. If something happens to you, if the integration fails, the Matrix would seek the next most compatible host. The Institute knows this, it's why they've kept me involved despite the risks. You're their backup plan, Ben realized, disgust evident. If I don't survive the integration, they expect the Matrix to transfer to you. Elena nodded grimly. Why do you think Director Chambers agreed to your terms so easily? In their worst-case scenario, they still get what they want, a controlled Matrix bearer they've been preparing for years. The calculated ruthlessness of the arrangement chilled Ben more than any direct threat. The Institute had positioned Elena not just as a researcher but as a contingency, a replacement vessel show. LD Ben's body reject the Matrix or its influence prove too corrupting. Why tell me this? He asked, studying her with renewed wariness. Seems like something the Institute would want kept secret. Because you deserve to know what you're really fighting for, Elena replied, unexpected fierceness in her tone. Not just your own survival, but mine too. If you fall to the Matrix's influence, I become their next experiment. She stepped closer, conviction evident in every word. I won't go back to being technology's puppet, Ben. Not the nanites, not the Matrixes, and certainly not the Institutes. The personal stake transformed Ben's understanding of Alina's involvement. Not just professional interest or lingering attachment, but existential self-preservation drove her commitment to solving the Matrix problem. In that light, her proposed solution, selective integration rather than removal or surrender, represented her own hard-won path applied to his circumstances. "We'll figure this out," Ben promised. The words carrying more weight than platitude. "No one becomes anyone's puppet on my watch." Alina's smile held equal parts gratitude and determination. "That's why the Matrix chose you first. Even its alien consciousness recognizes what I've always known. Ben Tennyson doesn't surrender, even when the odds are impossible." The compliment hung between them, genuine and weighted with history. Before either could speak further, a subtle electronic chirp from ship broke the moment. The galvanic mechamorph extended a tendril toward the laboratory entrance, where Julie stood watching the exchange with carefully neutral expression. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, stepping fully into the room. "Gwen's established contact with Kai. She has new information about the seal that might be relevant to our research." Elena immediately shifted back to professional mode, the vulnerable moment sealed away behind scientific focus. "Excellent. Let's incorporate her findings immediately." As they moved to join the others, Ben found himself in the uncomfortable position of walking between the two women, Elena striding ahead with determined purpose, Julie matching his pace with quiet supportiveness. Ship flowed between them, occasionally connecting all three in a circuit of living technology that seemed oddly symbolic of their current arrangement. The Devil Omnitrix pulsed steadily against Ben's wrist, its rhythm neither accelerating nor slowing but maintaining the precise cadence of a countdown. Whatever the device intended for its host, whatever the Lords of Nyctalus had designed it to accomplish, the process continued inexorably beneath the surface of their plans and countermeasures. In the Institute's secure conference room, the team gathered around displays showing G. Kai's latest discoveries, ancient warnings and prophecies about dimensional convergence that predated modern civilization. As discussions of magical boundaries and technological countermeasures filled the room, Ben found his attention divided between the urgent present and Alina's revelation. The Matrix hadn't just chosen him by chance or proximity. It had selected him from all possible hosts on Earth, seeking specific genetic markers and transformation experience. The implications extended beyond his immediate predicament to questions of design and purpose that transcended dimensions. Why did humans carry genetic markers compatible with interdimensional technology? What connection existed between his family line and Alina's that made them suitable vessels for power from beyond their reality? And most troublingly, if the Matrix represented weaponry in an ancient dimensional conflict, did its arrival herald the war's resumption with Earth as its battleground? The Devil Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, neither confirming nor denying these suspicions, its crimson light occasionally showing flickers of turquoise from the seal's influence. Whatever answers existed remained locked within its alien consciousness, accessible only through the transformations that drew Ben ever closer to complete integration. Time would tell which proved stronger, the will of Ben Tennyson or the purpose of the infernal Matrix. For now, surrounded by allies both old and new, he chose to believe in the former while preparing for the latter. The hunt had only just begun. Chapter 3 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.